Urgent. My sister's YouTube channel at Renovative has been hacked. Please be aware of any strange or unusual content posted on her channel as it is no longer under her control. We urge you to subscribe to her new channel, Rena Fiction, to avoid any confusion or misinformation. Thank you for your understanding and support during this difficult time. Hello to all lovers of lemon scenes. I invite you all to my boosty so you can watch your favorite Naruto What If stories in complete comfort. A subscription to Naruto Lemon costs $1.04. The first video with a full lemon is already on my boosty channel. Dare! Minato Namikaze was one of the richest people in the country. He was handsome, intelligent, but also cold and cruel. For the sake of his goal, he could do a lot, even murder and blackmail. His best friend and companion was Uchiha Fugaku, who also did not disdain force and could personally kill the unwanted. Of course, few people knew about their bloodthirsty life, only those who were loyal to them and ready to follow them to the end. They had connections everywhere and did not hesitate to use them, knowing full well that they would not dare to contradict them. But even such cruel people can have such a feeling as love. Minato fell in love with an ordinary girl. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki. She had long red hair, gray eyes and an explosive temper. Minato found out about his beloved bit by bit, wanting to make her his own. He knew that her family owned a bakery, and she herself was fond of painting. Minato almost every day gave her flowers and invited her on dates, but Kushina refused, and threw the flowers away. "I'm looking and decided to get drunk today." Fugaku grinned as he entered his friend's office. Refused again? Why doesn't she agree? Minato didn't understand. Anyone in her place would have been mine long ago, but not her. Mikoto didn't let me near her right away either. I had to go to great lengths to win her. The brunette shrugged, pouring himself a whiskey. Even for a crime? Minato chuckled. Fugaku glanced at his friend and drained the glass in one gulp, almost. The man sighed. I threatened her family. After that, she didn't talk to me for a long time. But you know. I'm not sorry. Fugaku grinned, pouring himself another drink. She's with me, I don't care about the rest. I think you're right. Minato nodded and immediately there was a knock on the door. Come in, Minato-san. A young man with snow-white hair and a half-face mask covering the lower part entered the office. Kakashi, did you want something? The blonde man asked, leaning back in his chair. Yes. You ordered me to report everything concerning Kushina-san. Kakashi said and went to the table and put the photo down. There was a picture of Kushina with some guy. They were standing in an embrace and smiling. This. Who? Minato growled. Fugaku looked at the photo and looked at his enraged friend. He already knew how it would end. His name is Leon. Kakashi immediately replied, taking a step back. They have been dating for a year and today he proposed to her. Year? Minato was surprised. Why am I only finding out about this now? For almost 3 months he lived in another city because of work. And only recently returned. Kakashi reported. I immediately found out everything about him as soon as I saw them together. Okay. Minato nodded and looked at his friend. I wanted to achieve it without resorting to force, but it looks like I'll have to do the same as you, but you won't limit yourself to threats, will you? Fugaku asked, taking a sip from his glass. Of course. Kakashi, take some people and grab this Leon. Minato said, pointing at the photo. Bring him to that warehouse. I get it. Kakashi nodded and immediately left. Fugaku grinned and poured more whiskey to the blonde. A couple of days later, a mutilated body was found in the park. The young guy was tortured beyond recognition, his arms and legs were broken, numerous cuts and bruises. But the worst thing is, his stomach was ripped open, and his eyes and tongue were torn out. They were able to identify him by the pass that they found in his pocket. Kushina was shocked by this news and did not leave the room for several days. Minato didn't waste any more time and visited his beloved, already knowing how to make her be with him. "What do you need?" Kushina asked aggressively, opening the door. Her parents were at work, which was very lucky for Minato. "I wanted to talk." The blonde man smiled. "We have nothing to talk about," Kushina said, about to close the door. "But they wouldn't let her, are you sure?" Minato asked coldly. Kushina shuddered and looked tensely at the man. "I want you to be my wife." "What makes you think I'll agree?" "You'll agree." Minato smiled again and approached Kushina closely. "After all, you don't want your family to suffer. You wouldn't dare." The girl hissed, "I already dared," Minato said calmly, running his hand over her cheek. "Got rid of the obstacle that stood between us, Leon," the girl said with horror. "So it's you, the choice is yours." Ice appeared in the man's eyes. He has always achieved his goal and will never miss his goal. Kushina was an ordinary girl, helped her parents in a bakery, met a guy she loved very much. She dreamed of a magnificent wedding with her beloved, of children and happy everyday life. But when she met Minato, her life turned upside down. She didn't want her family to suffer, so she agreed to become his wife. Minato was happy and wasted no time in making preparations for the wedding. Kushina did not share his happiness, but simply humbly walked to the altar in a magnificent white dress, to where the man she hated stood. Fugaku was happy for his friend and congratulated him, wishing him a speedy addition. The brunette's own son Itachi was already growing up, and his beloved reported that she was pregnant again. Minato, having found out, also congratulated his friend and his wife on this. Mikoto looked at Kushina and saw the pain in her eyes. She understood what the girl was feeling. She did not hide her story from her and simply advised her to be patient, assuring that everything would work out. Kushina thought otherwise. She knew that she would not be able to love Minato, to love this monster. Minato liked spending time with his wife, caressing her, kissing her. Kushina just humbly accepted it all, and after learning about the pregnancy, she accepted it as it is. She gave birth to twins. A beautiful girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, she was named Naruko. And a boy with red hair and blue eyes, he was named Kurama. But the woman did not feel maternal love for them, not wanting to be near them. Minato saw this and almost demanded her to pay attention to them. Kushina just accepted her life, her motherhood, and just lived looking out the window at the garden from her bedroom. There was silence in the light-flooded room. A red-haired boy of 6 was sleeping on a large bed, hugging his pillow. He was dreaming of something good, as the smile on his lips had not disappeared for a long time. The door to the room quietly opened and the intruder silently began to approach the bed. Step by step, he came closer, and a smile of anticipation appeared on his face. Approaching the dense one, the intruder jumped on the bed. "Wake up and sing," the young blonde screamed, pinning the boy to the bed. "Naruko!" Kurama screamed, jumping up and looking angrily at his sister. "How many times have I asked you not to wake me up like this? Come on, brother. It's fun to watch you scream like a girl." Naruko laughed, dodging the pillow. "I'm not yelling." Kurama was angry, yelling. The blonde clapped her hands. Kurama immediately attacked his sister and began to tickle, knowing full well that she was afraid of this. "Don't. Unfair. Enough," Naruko shouted, laughing and trying to push her brother away. "This is revenge for you, sister." The boy giggled, falling down next to her. "You're a book." The girl pouted, but took her brother's hand. Naruko and Kurama grew up quite mischievous children. Especially Naruko, she was constantly dragging her brother into something. Naruko liked bright things, like her brother, but unlike Kurama, she preferred orange colors, and he red. She loved to read fairy tales about princes and dragons, and Kurama about monsters. Naruko liked to spend more time outside and play, and Kurama preferred to sit at home and watch some movie. But despite their different tastes and hobbies, they were very friendly, not wanting to leave each other for a long time. Kurama loved his little sister very much, so much that he began to get angry if she paid attention to anyone else. He was calm only to his father, mother, and their nanny Sophie. But even so, notes of jealousy appeared. Mommy flew into the bedroom of Naruko's parents. She loved her mother very much and did not understand why Kushina sometimes did not pay attention to her. Naruko tried to be constantly with her, telling about her adventures with her brother. Kushina only smiled at this, but somehow it was fake, at least she seemed that way to the girl. Mom, and Kurama does not want to walk with me in the garden. And why is that? The woman asked calmly, shifting her gaze to her daughter. Naruko froze. She always saw emptiness in her mother's eyes and it scared her. He said he was bored there. And what he wants to read? Naruko complained, sitting down next to the woman on the floor near the chair. Take it and read it too. I don't want to. The girl waved her head. I want to go for a walk, but I'm bored alone. Ask Sophie, she's busy too. Naruko replied sadly. Mom, why? The girl began, but immediately fell silent. She was afraid to ask why she didn't love them, why she didn't want to be around. What? Kushina looked at her daughter and saw sadness in her eyes. Watching the twins, she saw that they were not similar characters. Naruko was more energetic, cheerful, couldn't stand still and was very kind, trying to help everyone. And Kurama was more reserved, cold with almost everyone except his sister. She noticed the similarity of his character with Minato. And sometimes his looks scared her, especially when Naruko was talking to someone. She didn't want to be around them at first because they are Minato's children. But looking at Naruko, seeing her smile and listening to her stories, Kushina began to come to life a little. Her daughter reminded her of herself as a child, when she was just as restless. Nothing. Naruko replied, laying her head on her lap and feeling how they started stroking her hair. Can you walk with me? I'm afraid Mom can't. Minato smiled as he entered the room. Dad. The little girl jumped up and rushed to hug her father. Minato picked her up in his arms and kissed her on the cheek, which had 3 scars, like the second one. She got them when she was 3 years old, when a stray cat attacked her on the street. Then Minato was very scared for his daughter, in other things, not only him. Fortunately, everything went well, but the scars remained and did not spoil her appearance at all, but gave her more grace. Why can't Mom? Because Mom will go with me on business. Minato replied, glancing at Kushina. The woman looked at her husband, and after getting up from the chair, went to the closet. Well, that's it. The blonde pouted, well, don't be sad, little fox. Next weekend we'll go to the zoo, all together. Really? Naruko beamed, really, I love you daddy. The little girl said cheerfully, hugging her father by the neck. I'm going to tell Kurama. Run. Minato chuckled, releasing his daughter. Naruko immediately ran away to please her brother, and Minato approached his wife. Is something wrong? Nothing. Kushina said calmly, turning around. Okay. Said the man hugging his wife. We have to be at the office in an hour. I need to sort out some papers before tomorrow's meeting. And I will be very grateful if you help me with this, of course. Kushina nodded. Minato stroked her cheek and kissed her, holding her closer to him. He loved her and every day he told her and proved it to her. The man saw that his beloved was already calmly reacting to everything and even began to communicate better with the children than before. He was sure that no matter how many years passed, he would get love from her. Minato still gave her flowers and expensive gifts, took her to romantic places. He fulfilled almost all her whims, which happened very rarely. Kushina saw it, knew that he loved her, but it's hard for her to accept these feelings, especially knowing what her husband is like. More than once she noticed traces of blood on his things, heard his furious screams from the office and saw the mistreatment of some people. It was because of this that she could not fall in love. Naruko ran to her brother's room with a big smile to share the good news. But he did not share her joy, considering it stupid to look at some animals. Angry at her brother, Naruko ran away to the garden that was near the house. Kurama liked spending time with his sister, but sometimes he tried to be alone, because he was not as energetic as Naruko. So today Kurama decided to devote this day to reading. Naruko wandered around the garden and scolded her brother for everything she could, until she heard whining. Looking behind a bush, she saw a white puppy. "Hey, kid," Naruko said, coming closer to him. "Come here, don't be afraid." The girl held out her hand, letting him sniff her. The puppy, seeing nothing dangerous, approached. "How beautiful you are. Do you want to live with me?" Naruko picked up the puppy in her arms and immediately ran home, colliding with her father and mother at the stairs. "Dad, look, I found a puppy. Can I keep it?" "Please, a fox cub, a dog is a big responsibility," the man said seriously. "He needs to be cared for, fed, walked. I will do it all." "You are welcome." "Mom, let me." The girl asked, looking at her father, then at her mother. "You can leave it." The woman smiled, seeing her daughter's shining eyes. Naruko hugged Kushina with a big smile and ran into the bathroom to wash the pet. Minato just sighed and kissed his wife, went with her to the car. Naruko was running to the bathroom, clutching the puppy to her, when she ran into Kurama. The boy looked at the puppy in surprise, and then at his sister. "Where is he from?" "I found it in the garden." Naruko smiled. "Mom let me keep it." "And why do you need it?" Kurama asked with displeasure. "Play with him, go for a walk," the girl enumerated, not noticing her brother's frown. "And he will sleep in my room." "Oh, Sophie-chan, please help me." The blonde screamed, noticing the babysitter, and immediately ran up to her. Kurama just watched her go, already hating this puppy. Kurama stood at the window and watched his sister. Naruko was running around the garden, and a puppy was running after her with a tail. Naruko named the little dog Lu and spent a lot of time with him, which made her brother very angry. Lu had been living with them for 2 weeks, delighting his mistress. Naruko brought him to her parents' bedroom and told her mother what he could do and what she would teach him. Kushina saw with what love her daughter treated the puppy and could not restrain her smile. The woman understood that only next to her daughter she felt calmer. She liked to feel the warmth in her chest looking at Naruko. Of course, she still behaved aloof, but she realized that her daughter was still dear to her. What cannot be said about the son? She also tried to spend time with him as well as with Naruko, but subconsciously, the woman was afraid of him. Without understanding the reasons for this. Even now, she noticed with what hatred Kurama looked at the puppy. The boy clenched his fists, trying to control himself. He was infuriated by this dog, which took away all his sister's attention from him. He wanted this puppy to disappear forever. "Kurama," Kushina called him. The boy turned around, piercing his mother with an icy look. Realizing who was standing in front of him, he calmed down a little. "Mom, did you want something?" The boy asked quite seriously for his age. "Why aren't you walking with Naruko?" Kushina asked, feeling an arm around her waist. "I don't want to," Kurama said with annoyance and looked out the window again. "What's the matter? Is something annoying you?" Minato asked, coming closer to his son. Kushina decided to leave them and went to the bedroom to rest a little after a walk. It annoys me that Naruko only plays with this dog. She stopped waking me up in the morning like before and taking me outside to play with her. Kurama was indignant, feeling his anger growing more and more. I see. Minato smiled as he looked at his daughter playing. Naruko just made a friend with whom she has fun. This is absolutely normal. You can also play with him and spend time with Naruko. I tried to explain everything to my son. And she will be pleased. Try, okay. Kurama nodded and headed for the exit. Minato watched him go and grinned and went to his wife. He saw the look of his son. He looked the same way at the people who were hanging around his wife. As an adult, he could control himself, but he wasn't sure about his son. It's worth keeping an eye on him, just in case. Naruko. The boy called her, coming closer. Noticing her brother, the girl ran towards him, smiling broadly. Did you come to play with us? Jumping around her brother, the blonde laughed. Yes. I decided to join. Not though. The boy nodded, casting a cold glance at the puppy. Great. You drive too much. Slapping her brother on the shoulder, Naruko ran forward. Kurama looked dumbfounded at his sister, and then ran after her, ignoring the dog. They ran after each other for about 2 hours, but Kurama was still not happy. Naruko was distracted by the puppy, bouncing off him or trying to catch him. Kurama. Naruko. It's time for lunch. Sophie called them. Naruko picked up the puppy and ran into the house. And Kurama remained standing in place, watching his sister go. Kurama sat in his room until the evening, not wanting to see this dog. He wanted Naruko to stop playing with the puppy, so that she would only play with him again. To also try to get him outside, jump on the bed wanting to wake him up, make fun of him and run away. And for this it was necessary to get rid of the interference. After waiting until late at night, Kurama entered his sister's room. Thanks to the moonlight, the room was more or less light, which made it possible to see my sister and the puppy, who was sleeping at the foot. Coming closer, the boy gently stroked his sister's hair. Then he took the puppy in his arms and left the room. Naruko woke up from the bright sun that shone through the window. Stretching, the girl looked at the end of the bed, where the puppy usually slept, but he was not there. After looking around, Naruko did not find him, deciding that Sophie took him to feed. Sophie-chan, where's Lu? Naruko asked, running up to the nanny. Naruko? I haven't seen him. Maybe running around somewhere. Sophie replied. Ask Kurama. Yeah. The girl nodded and ran to her brother. Kurama was found in the living room reading some kind of picture book. You haven't seen Lu? I can't find him in the morning. No, I haven't. Besides, I'm not interested in where he might be. Kurama said rudely. Naruko looked at her brother in surprise and sat down closer to him. Why are you angry? The blonde asked. I'm not mad, you're angry. I see. Tell me why. She insisted. Because you only play with Lu, and you don't pay attention to me. Kurama confessed, looking at his sister. Naruko smiled and hugged him. Kurama immediately returned the hug. Well, I'm sorry. It's just that you rarely agree to go out with me. And I can play with Lu all the time. But I'll change everything, I'll play with you a lot too. The girl said cheerfully, looking at her smiling brother. I'll just find Lu first. Naruko clapped her hands and ran to her parents' room. Kurama watched her go and continued reading with a satisfied look. Naruko ran around the whole house, but no one saw the puppy. The only place where the girl did not look was the garden. Going outside, Naruko began to call the dog, looking behind every bush or tree, but he did not appear. Naruko was already almost crying, coming closer to the small fountain that decorated this garden. He was nowhere to be found, which is why she decided that the puppy had run away. Having bypassed the fountain, the girl froze with horror looking at the picture that opened up to her. Behind the fountain, in a flower bed with beautiful flowers, her puppy was lying, or rather what was left of him. His paws were broken so that you could see the bones. The belly was cut open, and the insides were lying nearby. The eyes were gouged out, and the lower jaw was lying next to the head. Seeing this mess, Naruko screamed at the top of her voice, jumping back and falling, trying to move away as far as possible. Several servants and Minato and Kurama immediately came running to the cry, "Little fox, what's the matter?" Minato asked excitedly, hugging his crying daughter. "There. Lu," Naruko said crying, pointing to the fountain. Sophie decided to take a look and looked behind the fountain. When she saw what was there, she couldn't hold back vomiting and ran away. Minato moved away from his daughter, looked in there himself and immediately turned his gaze to his son. Kurama sat next to Naruko and hugged her, trying to calm her down. But he could not hide a satisfied smile from his father, making it clear who had done such a thing. "Brother, there's Lu, he's. Naruko whispered, snuggling up to her brother. "It's okay, sis. I'm near. Don't cry, please," Kurama was saying, looking up at his father. Minato only nodded briefly and looked at the servants, telling them to clean everything up. "Naruko," the man called her. "You need to calm down. If you want, we'll buy you another puppy," the father suggested, noticing the angry look of his son. "I don't want another one." Crying, the girl answered, "I don't want anyone. Kurama, take Naruko to her room, and then come to me, okay?" The boy nodded and helped his sister up. After taking her to her room and putting her to bed, asking her to get some sleep, he went to his father's office. "Why did you do that?" Minato asked, looking at his son. Kurama stood and was silent, looking at his father absolutely calmly. "He shouldn't have been killed, especially like this. He could have just been thrown over the fence. He infuriated me. Naruko played only with him, paid too much attention to him," the boy answered angrily. "I decided to teach him a lesson for this, Kurama," the man began sternly. "I understand that you don't like it when someone is near Naruko and takes her attention. But try not to do that again. Soon you will go to school and she, like you, will have friends with whom she will communicate." "I get it," Kurama said seriously. "I'll try to restrain myself. For Naruko's sake, I hope so." Minato nodded, doubting his words. "Now go to your sister." Nodding, Kurama immediately went to Naruko's room. When he entered, he noticed that the girl had fallen asleep. Lying down next to him, the boy hugged his sister, nuzzling her hair with his nose. He will not allow anyone to take his sister, only a select few will be allowed to approach her. But there are no such people yet and they are unlikely to be found. Kurama smiled at his thoughts and closed his eyes, hugging his sister closer to him. It was a rainy day outside, which confirmed the onset of autumn. But even such weather could not spoil Naruko's mood. She sat with her friends in the dining room and talked non-stop, waving her arms sometimes. Kurama was sitting at the next table with his classmate and best friend Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke was dark-haired, with black eyes and aristocratic features. He was cold and rude to everyone except Kurama and Naruko. He has been communicating with the two of them since he was 5 years old and became very close friends, finding a common language mainly with Kurama. But he did not forget about Naruko either. He liked her for her constant positivity. Their families visited each other quite often and the children were able to make friends. Naruko never let Sasuke and Itachi get bored, dragging them into their games. However, they did not mind. Only next to her could they show their emotions and have fun from the heart. "Aren't you tired of drilling holes in them?" Uchiha grinned, throwing a glance at Naruko. "No," Kurama said coldly, and after sighing, he put his hands in front of him, and his head on them. It pisses me off when she talks to someone else. Well, that's understandable. My brother told me that this is called a fraternal complex. And it is practically not treated. Are you implying that I'm sick? Kurama asked, looking at his friend. Who knows? Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. Kurama and Sasuke were considered almost princes at school. Girls ran after them, and boys tried to make friends with them. But they didn't let many people in, so to speak, only useful ones. They were only 9 years old, but they were already able to show themselves as leaders and capable of subjugating themselves. Many boys did not realize that they themselves had become the personal sixes of these two. But even if they did, they would consider it an honor to be subordinate to them. As a result, thanks to Sasuke and Kurama, a small group appeared in the school. No matter how funny it sounds. Naruko was not part of this group, but Sasuke and Kurama made it clear to everyone that it was better not to touch her. Kuchan ran up to brother Naru, forcing him to raise his head. What do you want? The boy asked indifferently, but he was glad that his sister still paid attention to him. Sasuke snorted at this and drank tomato juice from a glass. I found out that Mei likes you. Naruko said softly, sitting down next to her brother. And what? Like what? Mei is pretty. You could have made friends. The girl said confidently, to which Kurama grimaced. Let me decide who to be friends with. Okay? Ku said roughly, I just suggested it. The blonde frowned, and I just answered. I'm not going to be friends with just anyone. Kurama snorted and turned away. They're not with just anyone. The sister was indignant. They're my friends, okay. These are your friends who just happen to be. Naruko answered louder, attracting attention. Sasuke looked at his girlfriend and frowned. Well, except for Sasuke. Naruko immediately corrected herself, receiving an approving nod. So don't talk to my friends. Kurama shrugged his shoulders. So I won't. And I won't be with you. Naruko said resentfully and left under her brother's dumbfounded gaze. She was offended that her friends were treated this way. She had noticed for a long time that her brother did not like it when she started to communicate with someone. He insulted them, could push them, and she didn't like it anymore. Naruko, as promised, stopped communicating with her brother, completely ignored him. Kurama was furious about it and almost snapped at everyone. Sasuke only laughed at this, but helped with advice on how to measure up with his sister. Such a boycott lasted a week. Naruko herself regretted that she had announced a boycott to her brother, but she was not going to be the first to reconcile. I didn't see myself guilty. Naruko was sitting in her room when there was a knock on the door. Naru-chan. Kurama did not call her loudly. Naruko looked up at him and immediately turned away. Naru-chan, don't be angry. I really didn't mean to offend your friends. It just came out. He blurted out. Naruko snorted, but then sighed and looked at her brother. This isn't the first time you've insulted them. And I'm not happy about it. Well, I'm sorry. Simply, understand, the boy tried to come up with something, but there were no ideas for evil. I understand what? I'm afraid they'll hurt you. Does it hurt? What do you mean? The girl did not understand. Well, like. They said they were your friends, and then they would betray you. Kurama found an excuse, looking at his uncomprehending sister. It's all nonsense. They won't do that. How do you know? After all, everything happens. Kurama interrupted her. I'm just worried. That's all. I promise I won't insult them anymore. With you. Said the last words more quietly. Okay. And you're sorry then? I got overreacted too. Nothing. Kurama hugged her, inhaling the pleasant smell. The world, the world. The blonde smiled. I see you've made up. Sasuke said the next day. Of course. Did you doubt it? The red-haired man grinned, glancing at his sister. Naruko was standing at the window and telling her friend something, otherwise as usual. No, Uchiha shook his head. I just didn't think that you would measure up so quickly. It was quite fun watching you. Am I a clown to you? Kurama was indignant, a little. The brunette shrugged his shoulders and noticed that Naruko was walking towards them. Kuchan, Sasuke-kun, don't you want to go for a walk after school? The blonde asked with a sweet smile. Kurama and Sasuke immediately looked at Naruko's friends. They stood and looked at them with excitement. The boys immediately understood what was what. I'm sorry, but I'm busy after school. Sasuke immediately replied. I'm helping my brother and I'm too lazy. Kurama shrugged his shoulders and yawned. Well, damn. I was hoping. The girl mumbled and went to her friends. Sasuke and Kurama exchanged glances and exhaled with relief. School days flew by quickly. Naruko was chatting with her friends, trying to drag Kurama and Sasuke away for a walk with them. Meanwhile, the boys almost ran away from her. And then the weekend came, which was only a joy for Kurama. Naruko was also happy about it, but for some reason there was no mood. Kurama noticed this and tried to cheer her up. I don't want Kuchan. Naruko was acting up, trying to pull her hand away. Which means I don't want to. By the way, I tried for you. Kurama was indignant, continuing to drag his sister into the kitchen. He asked the cook to cook her favorite muffins with orange for her sister. They always lifted her spirits. Naruko looked at her outraged brother and smiled. Very well. Just let go, I'll go myself. Nope. I know you. You'll run away right away. I won't run away. Except for the kitchen. My sister giggled. Kurama looked at her and let her go. Naruko immediately started to the kitchen, and he chuckled and chased after her. Naruko quickly descended the stairs and ran towards the kitchen. But one of the maids appeared on the way, which is why the girl crashed into her. This maid's name was Morel. She had only been working for a couple of months, but she really hoped to take the place of the wife of the owner of the house. She had a bad temper, but she tried to hide it. Many noticed that the girl almost looked at Kushina and her children with hatred. In dreams, already sending them to boarding school. But today she wasn't in a good mood, perhaps because Minato didn't buy into her charms or something else. Oh, I'm sorry Morel-chan. Naruko smiled, but the girl just frowned and pushed her away. Unable to resist, the girl fell, knocking down a small vase from the bedside table and falling right on it. A scream immediately spread through the house. What happened? Sophie appeared right away. But when I noticed Morel and Naruko, I immediately understood. Naruko was sitting on the floor and holding her cut hand. She fell when she was running. The girl said calmly, confident that they would believe her. Not true. Naruko sobbed. You pushed me, that's a lie. The girl began to be indignant, looking at the blonde with hatred. And not noticing the furious gaze of the twin at all. Kurama saw exactly what happened and it infuriated him. He walked up to his sister and sat down next to her, looked at her hand. Sophie also sat down next to her to wrap her hand in a handkerchief that she had in her pocket. Kurama took a fragment from the vase and got up, turned to Morel. The girl stood and just looked at what was happening, missing the moment when Kurama knocked her to the floor with a running start and struck her in the chest with a splinter. The girl screamed, but Kurama struck again and again, piercing not only the chest but also the throat, not wanting to hear her screams. Naruko and Sophie watched in horror, afraid to even move. Kurama stopped only 5 minutes later, when the girl's entire chest and stomach turned into a mess, and he himself was covered in her blood. Rising to his feet, the boy turned to his sister and began to approach her. Naruko looked at the body with horror. She was shaking all over, and tears were flowing down her cheeks. Naruchan. Kurama called to her, sinking down next to her. "Everything is fine now. She won't hurt you anymore," said the boy, hugging his sister and soiling her clothes. Naruko did not move, but only trembled, allowing her brother to hug her. "I will always protect you, sis. Just don't cry." Minato sat in his office and looked at his son. Kurama was sitting on the opposite side of him, calmly looking at his father, and there was not a hint of fear or excitement. Many people came running to the maid's cry, including Kakashi, Minato's right-hand man. Everyone was shocked by the young master's act. Kurama, in a rage, struck blow after blow, and there was a lot of blood, not only on the floor, but also on the boy himself. After that, Kurama hugged his sister and, smiling, stroked her hair. The girl's corpse was hidden, and Kurama was locked in his room until Minato arrived. Naruko had to be sedated to make her fall asleep. Kushina, having learned about the incident, came to her daughter and stayed with her until her awakening. "Kurama," Minato said sternly. The man did not expect that his son would be so cruel. Yes, he killed his sister's puppy out of jealousy, and Minato understood that this could happen again. However, a man himself could kill anyone in a rage, but this is him, an adult man who is able to control his rage. And his son is still a child, so he couldn't restrain himself and killed. Minato was only worried that Kurama would not be able to contain his rage at school or on the street. And it will be difficult to get him off. "Do you understand what you've done?" "Yes," Kurama replied clearly. "Really? But I don't think you do," Minato said roughly. "You killed a man, in front of your sister and other people. I understand you were angry about that girl's act. But there was no need to do that. I would have dealt with it myself. What kind of brother am I if I can't protect my sister?" Kurama said furiously. Minato looked at his son and saw himself. "Anyone who harms my sister will pay." Kurama, Minato began, but the boy interrupted him. "I understand that it was not necessary to do so. But when I saw Naruko on the floor with a wounded arm, I just couldn't help myself," the boy honestly admitted. "But I don't regret it, hm. Good." Minato nodded. He himself could not contain his rage a couple of times and understood what his son was feeling. "But no one has cancelled the responsibility for this. I've dealt with what you've done. You have nothing to worry about. But you will still be punished. You're under house arrest until the end of the school year. Kakashi will see to it. Also, you should learn to restrain your rage. You have to understand that next time, I won't be able to hush up something like this." "I understand, father," Kurama said seriously. "It won't happen again. At least in public." Minato sighed at this and closed his eyes. "I, too, sometimes can't contain my rage, so I deal with objectionable people without witnesses. Most often I take them somewhere. Therefore, I advise you to do the same. But I would like this not to happen, of course." Kurama nodded. "I can go ahead." The man released him and looked at Kakashi, who had been standing next to him all this time. "See to his punishment. And call Tsunade, ask her to look after Naruko. I'm worried about her, I'm listening." Kakashi nodded and headed for the door. Kakashi has been loyal to Minato since childhood. Hatake was an orphan and lived on the street, surviving as best he could. Minato found him, took him to himself, giving shelter and food, and in return demanding only loyalty. And he was loyal to him and ready to follow him to the end. Kurama entered his sister's room and stopped, frowning at his mother, who was sitting next to her and stroking her hair. Kushina, noticing her son's look, pulled her hand away. He scared her even more than Minato. Kurama shifted his gaze to his sister and walked over to the bed. He remembered how Naruko looked at him with fear, how she sobbed. But he was sure that his sister would understand and forgive him. Kushina followed him, and then got up and headed for the door. And the boy sat down next to his sister and began stroking her blonde hair, smiling. Sasuke, upon learning about the incident, was shocked and understood why Naruko did not appear at school. Kurama did not hide his act from Sasuke, completely trusting him. At his confession, the brunette grinned and said that he would cut off her hands for such a thing. Surprisingly, Sasuke did not condemn his friend's act, but on the contrary supported it. Who would have thought that these two 9-year-old boys would discuss such a thing? Naruko came to school a week later, telling everyone that she was just sick. Her father told her to keep quiet about what had happened, warning that Kurama could suffer from this. Naruko loved her brother and agreed to be silent, but the fear did not go away. She also talked to her brother and spent time with him, but tried not to provoke him. For some reason, it seemed to her that he could do the same with her friends. Naruko communicated with them as before, but kept her distance. Kurama saw this and rejoiced at Naruko's act, but also frowned seeing fear in her eyes. Naru. Kurama called out to her as they headed to the dining room. What? The girl replied, looking at her brother and Sasuke. Are you afraid of me? The red-haired man asked head-on. Sasuke carefully watched the blonde, seeing her excitement. What makes you think that? I see. In your eyes. You get nervous when I come up to you. Kurama enumerated, clenching his fists. He didn't like his sister's behavior, he wanted everything to be the same as before. Yes, I'm afraid. Still admitted the blonde. I'm afraid that you might do the same with my friends or others. I'm afraid that, after falling silent, Naruko lowered her head and squeezed the hem of her skirt. Like you did me. Kurama immediately interrupted her and hugged her, nuzzling her neck. Don't even think about it. I never, you hear? I will never hurt you. I will always protect and protect. Yes, I snapped then. Simply, seeing you bleed. Kurama said, squeezing her in his arms. I promise, it won't happen again. I won't hurt your friends if they don't touch you. Naruko shuddered at the words and tried to pull away. I want you not to be afraid of me. It makes me hurt, Ku. Naruko whispered and hugged her brother, burying her forehead in his shoulder. You're my brother. And I love you. I'm just scared after what happened. Give me time to come to my senses. The blonde asked. Kurama smiled and looked at his friend with satisfaction. Sasuke just grinned at that. He wouldn't like it either if Naruko became afraid of him. She was his best friend and he wouldn't want to change that. Naruko was not a fool and understood that her brother's act could not be called good. Fear of her brother remained with her, but she learned to hide it and just decided to try to prevent this. She understood that she would not be able to fully influence her brother, but she believed that if she made an effort, something would work out. Not suspecting that growing up Kurama can become much worse, Kurama was glad that his sister did not pull away from him. He saw that Naruko had become much more reserved in dealing with others. I tried to communicate only with him and Sasuke. She was also cheerful and energetic, but cautious. At home, she began to spend a lot of time in the library or with her mother. Kushina herself sometimes came to her room and talked about various topics, helped with lessons. Naruko was glad of her mother's attention and saw in it a little salvation from her fears. Kushina saw what her daughter had to do and hoped very much that she would recover and be able to move forward, building her bright future. Naruko was walking along the school corridor in the direction of the library. In high school, Kurama, like Sasuke, became almost an authority. Many were afraid of them, because they could beat anyone who they did not like or would not obey. Naruko tried to calm her brother, saying that it was not right. But no one listened to her, they just told her not to interfere. She stopped, especially after her brother rudely told her to stay out of his life. Naruko's only friend was Mei. She saw what a chicken and what her friend had and supported her as best she could. Kurama and Sasuke were also very popular with girls, and not once did they ask Naruko to give them love notes. The boys also looked at Naruko, but they were afraid to approach her because of her brother. But after that quarrel, Naruko stopped communicating with her brother and tried to stay away from him. Which her classmate took advantage of. Naruko-chan. A voice came from behind. Turning around, the blonde saw her classmate. His name was Sally. He was half a head taller than Naruko, brown hair, green eyes. Sally-kun. Did you want something? The girl asked, smiling. Sally approached her timidly and nodded. She saw that the guy was worried and did not rush him. Naruko-chan. And you? The guy stammered, blushing even more. Would you like to go to the cinema, a movie? The girl was surprised. She was invited somewhere for the first time. Yes. A new movie is coming out. Fantasy. So I thought. Sully said, tugging at his sleeve. Naruko smiled. I don't mind going. Really? The guy asked, not believing what he heard. However, anyone wouldn't believe it if a girl you really like would agree to go on a date with you. Really? Naruko nodded, noticing her friend behind the guy's back. Then let's do it this Saturday. At 1 o'clock at the fountain in the park, of course. I will come. The blonde agreed. Where will you come? Mei jumped up to them, looking with interest, then at the guy, then at her friend. Later. Naruko replied and dragged Mei by the hand into the library. See you later. Yeah. Sally said, blushing even more. Although much more. Did he ask you out on a date? Mei asked immediately. To the cinema. Naruko replied, knowing that it was useless to hide. Cool. And I noticed a long time ago that he is not indifferent to you. My friend beamed. I have no doubt. The blonde grinned, approaching the bookshelf. Aren't you afraid that Kurama will find out about it? And what? Naruko didn't understand. He won't care about it. Besides, he said to stay out of his life. Which means he shouldn't get into mine. Said the girl, taking the right book. Well, that's logical. Mei agreed. But it's just that, if you remember elementary school, he controlled almost every step you took. It was in elementary school. And now we are in the middle. Naruko replied, I see. So, what are you going to wear for a date? I don't know. Naruko wondered. Depending on the weather. You can see for yourself, it's raining almost every day now. That's right. But still. Dress nicely. And be sure to tell me everything. My friend insisted. Naruko nodded at this and went to class in high spirits. Saturday was surprisingly a sunny day, which Naruko was only glad of. She started sorting through her closet in the morning in search of suitable clothes, but she didn't know what to wear. And she didn't understand why she was so nervous. Mommy. The blonde woman called. Kushina turned her head towards her daughter and smiled. Minato was also in the room, looking at his daughter with interest, waiting for her to continue. What is Naruko? You couldn't help me. The boy invited me to the cinema. And I don't know what to wear. This is the first time so. The girl said excitedly, fiddling with her jacket. That's how. Of course I will help. And your excitement, too, is understandable. Kushina replied, noticing her husband's frown. Really? Yes. You just want to be beautiful for that boy, that's all. It is okay. Naruko blushed at this and just nodded. Naruko. Her father called out. Does Kurama know about this? No, the blonde shook her head. I don't have to tell him. You still haven't reconciled? Kushina clarified. No. In other things, it's Kurama. We constantly quarrel and measure ourselves. The girl shrugged her shoulders. Kushina only nodded at this and followed her daughter. Kushina, as promised, helped her daughter choose a suitable outfit. She was wearing a blue dress, a light turquoise jacket on top, gray boots. After kissing her mother on the cheek, Naruko immediately ran away. Kurama was also absent in the morning, running away for a walk with Sasuke. Therefore, Naruko was glad that she didn't run into him. She ran to the meeting place on time, immediately noticing an excited classmate. After saying hello, they headed to the cinema, discussing various topics along the way. The film turned out to be really interesting, the children really liked it, and on the way to the park they only discussed it. After a little walk, they agreed to meet tomorrow and just take a walk. Naruko returned home in a good mood until she entered her room. Kurama was sitting on her bed, and Sasuke was sitting on a chair next to her. They both looked at Naruko with displeasure, and Sasuke also looked annoyed. "Well, how did you walk, sister?" Kurama asked, growling, without taking his eyes off his sister. "I had a great walk." The girl shrugged her shoulders, heading to the closet. "I noticed," Sasuke said irritably, which surprised the blonde. Sasuke himself didn't understand why yet, but it infuriated him when other guys approached his girlfriend. And when he told his brother about it, he just laughed and said that he would soon understand himself. That's the whole answer. And today, when he noticed Naruko and their classmate walking in the park, he realized that he was jealous. "And how long have you started walking together?" Kurama asked. He thought that guy shouldn't be around his sister. He is weak, incapable of anything. He won't be able to protect her. What difference does it make to you? Naruko didn't understand, noticing their strange behavior, a big one. "It's too early for you to go out with the boys," Kurama said head-on. "Besides, with such weaklings, firstly, I'm already 13, and I can walk with them, and even kiss. And secondly, did you kiss?" Sasuke interrupted her, somehow not looking kindly at her. "No," Naruko immediately replied, taking a step back, "one way or another. It's too early for you to think about boys," Kurama said rudely, getting up and leaving the room. Sasuke also got up and, despite his girlfriend, left. Naruko looked at the door with a dumbfounded look, not understanding why he suddenly said that. After calling a friend and telling her everything, she asked for advice on what to do. "Do you like Sally?" "Well, it's fun with him. He knows a lot of things. Anyway, he's interesting." Naruko was enumerating. "So you like it?" Mei summed up. "Continue to communicate with him, but carefully. You know your brother." "I know. That's what worries me," Naruko said, closing her eyes. She hasn't told Sasuke about the prank yet. "So you're going out with him tomorrow?" "Yes," the blonde said seriously, to which Mei laughed. Naruko and Sally began to spend a lot of time together. At school, they were already considered almost a couple. They sat together in the dining room or library, walked after school, sat in a cafe and just talked on the phone. Mei was happy for her friend and sometimes left them together, running away on business. Kurama and Sasuke were not happy about this. Especially Sasuke, looking at Naruko's new friend with hatred. Kurama quarreled with his sister several times, saying that it was too early for her to meet him. But the girl just waved off, saying that it's not too early, and they're just friends. Naruko was afraid for Sally, afraid that Kurama would do something to him. But fortunately for her, nothing like that happened. They didn't touch him, at least not in front of her. Kushina was glad that her daughter had got a new friend and even that she liked him. "But I was still worried, seeing the rage and jealousy in the eyes of my son and Sasuke." 2 weeks later, Sally and Naruko decided to go to the cinema, to see another new movie. Naruko was just about to leave when she realized that she was locked in a room. And no matter how much she knocked, no one opened the door. Realizing who was to blame for this, she immediately grabbed the phone and called Sally to warn her that she would not be able to come. But he didn't pick up the phone. Naruko called him several times, but to no avail. "Why are you sad, little sister?" Kurama asked cheerfully, coming into her room in the evening. Naruko looked at her brother, and noticing his pleased look, she became nervous. "What did you do?" "Nothing." The red-haired man shrugged and sat down next to his sister. "What did you do?" Naruko insisted, moving away from her brother. Kurama smiled like a predator. "I just talked to your friend. I explained to him that it's too early for you to go out with anyone." Kurama replied, continuing to frighten his sister with his smile. Naruko looked at her brother in amazement, and tears flowed down her cheeks. She knew exactly how her brother talked and understood what had happened to Sally. The next day, Naruko found out that Sally was in the hospital with numerous bruises and a broken arm. And 2 weeks later, Sally's family moved to another city. Sasuke and Kurama were as happy as ever, unlike Naruko. Mei comforted her friend for a long time, saying that everything would get better. After that, no guy dared to invite Naruko anywhere. And the blonde herself decided not to let anyone close to her. In order to avoid such cases, Naruko left the classroom and breathed a sigh of relief. She passed the exam and should not worry anymore. At least for now. Mei was still in class, so Naruko decided to wait for her friend in the park, not far from the school. And then go to the cinema or cafe with her. After leaving school, she immediately ran into Kurama and Sasuke. They were the very first to leave the classroom. "Have you already passed? I thought you'd be sitting there for 2 hours. Kurama grinned, to which Sasuke supported him by nodding. Naruko gave them an annoyed look and headed towards the park. "Where are you going?" Kurama frowned. "To the park. Take a walk and wait for Mei." The girl immediately reported, even without looking at her brother. "I'll go alone. And you have something to do." Kurama shifted his gaze to the girls that surrounded them and looked at his sister again. Kurama himself understood that he was moving away from her, but he was not going to change for her whim. He was sure that Naruko would be measured and would communicate with him again as before. Naruko was walking through the park looking for a bench. Fortunately, she was found not very far from the fountain, where they usually met with Mei. They graduated from high school. The senior one was expected ahead, and after university. And it was during this period that Naruko planned to leave, or rather move out of the house and start living independently, and most importantly away from her brother. She was sure that Kurama was unlikely to decide to go to the same university as her. The father plans to make Kurama his successor, and when the time comes to hand over all the cases to him. In other things, Kurama does not mind. He already knew that this would happen. And it was more difficult about Naruko, not for her, but for her father. Minato was afraid that his daughter would not find a place in her life or would find an unsuitable candidate for the role of husband. He did not doubt his son and was not afraid for his future, knowing perfectly well what he was like. He was worried about his daughter. Naruko was sitting on a bench and looking at the sky. Some guy sat next to her, digging into his phone and mumbling something under his nose. Naruko glanced at him and decided to get up to go to the fountain, but she felt pain in her leg. Lowering her gaze, she saw the syringe, and then everything blurred in her eyes and she blacked out. The guy looked around, picked up the blonde in his arms and headed away from the park, not noticing the stunned look of a short brown-haired woman. Mei knew that Naruko was waiting for her in the park, not far from the fountain or near it. But when she ran to the place, she saw her friend being taken away somewhere. Mei tried to catch up with them, but lost sight of them. Without wasting a minute of time, she ran to Kurama, remembering that she had seen him not far from the park. "Kurama!" Mei shouted, noticing the guy in his company not far from the cafe where they planned to go. But the guy did not pay attention to her, and continued to walk talking to Sasuke. "Kurama!" Mei repeated, already running up, what do you want? The guy said irritably. Sasuke snorted at this and examined Mei without interest. Naruko, the girl said, breathing heavily. Naruko, somebody, what about Naruko? Kurama started up, as did Sasuke. Excitement and rage appeared in her chest at those who had harmed her. She was kidnapped. Mei said, noticing the anger in the red-haired man's eyes. I saw some guy taking her somewhere. She was unconscious, let's go. Kurama said rudely and headed towards the bus stop. Mei and Sasuke drove home pretty quickly and told their father what had happened. Minato sat quietly in his chair and only clenched fists and rage in his eyes betrayed him. Kushina stood nearby, clutching the hem of her dress, looking at her husband with excitement. Kakashi. Minato said coldly, but the phone interrupted him. A message about the ransom came and a photo with Naruko tied up. After seeing the photo, Kushina began to cry, and Kurama growled, scaring Mei standing next to him. Sasuke was also furious and very worried about her, promising to kill those scum. Kakashi, find out where the message came from. Check the park, as well as security cameras. Minato gave instructions. Kakashi just nodded and left the office. Mei, right? He turned to the girl, to which she nodded. Did you see that guy? I saw him from behind. Mei said, noticing the man's displeased look. Exactly. The girl remembered and started digging in her pocket. He dropped it, holding out a battered photograph. It depicted Naruko and Mei. It was circled with a pen, and today's date was put at the bottom. The photo was taken at school. Someone was following her. Kurama, have you noticed this? Minato asked, looking closely at his son. No, the young man shook his head. I see. It remains to wait for the results from Kakashi. Minato said coldly, shifting his gaze to the crying Kushina. He went up to her and hugged her, kissed her temple. Don't worry, we'll find her soon. Can't Naruko be tracked by her phone? Sasuke suggested, trying to calm the storm inside. You can't. Mei said timidly, noticing the surprised looks. Nara disabled DPS. She said she didn't feel comfortable when it was on. Stupid. Kurama growled, deciding to personally check her phone. Mei was taken home and asked not to tell anyone about it. They will figure it out themselves. Kakashi checked the video cameras, but there were no results yet, which made Minato very angry. Fugaku, having learned from his son what had happened, came offering his help. Money was not asked for so much, at least for Minato. This money is not about anything, he can earn more. He is ready to pay a ransom, but to leave alive the scum who kidnapped his daughter, no. The first clues appeared only 4 hours later, and then the kidnapper was filmed accidentally. As it turned out, a group of teenagers were fooling around and filmed each other on their mobile and posted online. On one of them, it was seen how an unknown person with a girl in his arms approached the car and left. The license plate was hard to see, but Obito, Fugaku's cousin, was able to pinpoint her location for once or twice. There was about half an hour left to pay the ransom, but Minato didn't care. After finding out the exact address, he immediately headed there, knowing full well that Kakashi had already told the others where to go. Naruko was recovering for a long time. My head was spinning, and my eyes didn't want to open. She heard voices, but it was as if through glass. Memories flooded in immediately, not letting the dizziness pass completely. Opening her eyes, she noticed a man in a leather jacket and a tattoo on his face. Next to him was a girl, rather in a vulgar outfit, and a red-haired guy in a t-shirt and jeans. Noticing that the girl woke up, the girl approached her and roughly grabbed her by the hair, forcing her to look at herself. I hope your daddy loves you, she said sarcastically. Otherwise it will be a pity to kill such a cutie. If anyone gets killed, it's only you, Naruko replied calmly. She wasn't afraid, knowing full well what would happen when her father found out about her abduction. You're so self-confident, infuriating. The girl growled and slapped with all her might in the face. Be careful. The man with the tattoo said. Otherwise I know you, come on. I'm just going to play with her a little. The girl smiled and got up, kicked her stomach several times. Naruko moaned, but she managed to hold back her tears. She will still cry in front of them. By the way, Joe went to get the money, didn't he? Yes. Should be here soon. The guy nodded, shifting his gaze to the blonde. Do you think he will pay? Of course. The girl nodded. And if not, then the cutie will die. I didn't know you were so bloodthirsty. The man grinned, sitting down in an armchair. I'm not bloodthirsty. It just pisses me off that someone is everything, and someone is nothing. The girl growled, kicking the blonde a few more times, getting a stifled groan. And at that moment another guy in a black hoodie came into the room. There is no money. He didn't pay. The guy said irritably, looking at the prisoner. Are you sure? I'm sure. I stood there for a few minutes and waited. But no one showed up. The guy reported. The man frowned and looked at his accomplice. She stood and frowned at the guy, and then turned her gaze to the girl and started kicking out of anger. Naruko only clenched her teeth, feeling intense pain all over her body and blood in her mouth. She was also surprised by her father's act, but for some reason she believed that he would find her. If not him, then Kurama. The girl kicked the blonde a few more times, and then went to a table where there were several bottles of beer. And what should I do now? The guy in the hoodie asked. It's worth thinking about. The man said. What's there to think? The girl growled. She hoped to get rich and go somewhere. And here. Kill the girl. And to teach that teacher from school a lesson, for such a setup. And now in more detail. A cold voice was heard. Turning their heads, they noticed a tall blonde man with blue eyes full of rage. Minato looked around the room and came across his daughter. She was lying on the floor bound and beaten. Noticing the condition of his daughter, Minato wasted no time giving a signal to his people and headed towards her. Dad. Naruko croaked. Minato cut the ropes and gently lifted her into his arms. It's all right, little fox. Let's go home now. The man smiled. Kakashi, find out who the teacher is and who dared to beat my daughter. I'll figure it out myself, okay? Kakashi nodded, following the boss with his eyes. It was not difficult to find out everything. They quickly split, especially after the torture. 3 guys were killed on the spot, not forgetting to burn down the abandoned house where they were hiding. And the girl and the teacher, who also wanted free money, were taken to a special warehouse, where they took everyone with whom Minato personally dealt. Kurama, seeing his sister's condition, was seriously enraged. And after hearing from Kakashi that he found out who beat Naruko, he persuaded his father to take him with him. The girl screamed and sobbed, asking to stop, but Kurama did not listen. He cut off her fingers, one by one, and before that he broke her legs. Minato saw his son torturing a girl with bloodthirsty cruelty. It didn't even occur to him that this was wrong, that the child shouldn't be like this. Minato was just proud of him. After returning home, Kurama immediately went to his sister's room. Noticing that Naruko was asleep, he turned on DPS on her phone and lay down next to her, hugging her to him. Let them quarrel, let them fight, do not even communicate. Kurama will not allow anyone to harm her. I'm sorry I didn't follow. Whispered the young man. Falling asleep, Kurama stood against the wall and looked at the newcomer who appeared at the beginning of the school year. The kid, in his opinion, was quite cute, a good toy for him. At the age of 17, Kurama, like Sasuke, was heard by many. They were feared, respected, and aspired to be part of their already quite large grouping. Even the teachers tried not to contradict them. Health is more expensive. Kurama did not disdain the services of the girls who hung around him. But still, sometimes he resorted to violence, wanting to get something. Sasuke otherwise supported him in some matters, but for himself, Uchiha decided to get one inaccessible blonde for a long time. The brunette realized his feelings for Naruto a long time ago and even tried to take care of her, but she ignored him. Of course Sasuke didn't give up, and his feelings only got stronger. Like Kurama, he did not go as a virgin, bent over anyone who was ready to give herself to him, believing that she would then meet with him. They used it with joy. But at the same time, they made sure that some types did not approach Naruko, telling their sixes and faithful assistant to follow and report. Which they did a great job with. After learning about Sasuke's feelings, Kurama immediately approved of them, completely trusting his sister to a friend. That's just Naruko did not want to approve of this and generally tried to stay away from them, and prevent attempts to rape her brother. Waiting for the right moment, Kurama intercepted the newcomer in the corridor and pushed him under the stairs, pinching his mouth. The guy was scared and tried to escape, but the red-haired man held him tightly, pressing him closer to the wall. "How sweet you are," Kurama purred, licking his cheek. The guy mumbled and twitched, but to no avail. Well. We've only just started. I'm sure you're moaning loudly." Kurama grinned, thrusting his hand into the guy's pants. The young man could not hold back tears and continued to twitch. But Kurama only liked it. "Kurama." A woman's voice sounded behind him. The guy didn't even turn around, knowing perfectly well who was standing. "You're a little out of time," the red-haired man said coldly, continuing to paw the boy. Naruko saw how scared the new guy was and noticed for a long time how her brother looked at him. It was not difficult to guess what he was up to. "I don't care," Naru said roughly. "Let him go, why would I? Can't you see he likes it?" "Yes? I already asked the newcomer," to which the guy squeezed his eyes shut, moved away from him. Naruko growled. Kurama, sking, walked away from the guy. The young man rolled down the wall, continuing to look at the red-haired man with fear. Naruko immediately went to him and helped him up. "Are you okay?" "Why, yes," the young man replied in a trembling voice. "What a voice." Kurama grinned, scaring the newcomer even more. "That's enough. Go better than your whore's lemon, and do not approach normal people. Where have you seen normal people, sister? I'm sure this cutie wouldn't mind with me." "No," Naruko interrupted rudely and took the guy out into the corridor, bumping into Sasuke. Noticing the condition of the guy, the brunette immediately understood everything and grinned. He just didn't like that the girl was standing too close to him. "You're having fun without me, Kurama," Sasuke said cheerfully, casting a greedy glance at the blonde. "Well, I wouldn't have started without you." Kurama laughed. "Assholes." Naruko growled and led the guy to the exit. Sasuke and Kurama watched them go, and then returned to class. Seeing the guy to the gate, Naruko advised him not to go to school for a couple of days, and so, if anything, immediately contact her. Thanking him, the young man left. Naruko saved some girls from her brother's clutches several times, but more often she found them crying in some office or pantry. Kurama did it or Sasuke, she didn't care, they're both good. She tried to support them, to help them. Some agreed to support, but most tried to stay away from them or transfer altogether. She saved her brother's next victim. Mei commented as Naruko sat down next to her. Mei has been friends with Naruko since elementary school and has always supported her. We can say Kurama and Sasuke treated her safely and did not touch her, especially after the abduction incident. Therefore, Naruko was not afraid for her friend, but she was still on the alert. "You never know what, I guessed right." The girl sighed, casting a glance at her brother. Kurama was sitting on the desk and groping some girl, another toy. Who is it this time? New guy, come on. Mei was surprised. He's a guy, isn't he? Apparently, I was drawn to the exotic. Naruko growled, deciding to change the subject. Are you on a date when, what? Mei shuddered and immediately blushed. This weekend. Tim decided to take me to the cinema, and then to a cafe. Not bad. Naruko smiled. Oh. I'm sure you'll find your prince, too. Mei encouraged her friend. Yeah. If he doesn't get into his brother's clutches first. Naruko snorted, to which Mei nodded. It's not news to her what exactly happens to the daredevils who are trying to take care of her. The funny thing is, it involves more Sasuke than Kurama. And they both knew the reason. Mei once suggested that she start dating Sasuke, so the blonde looked at her like she was crazy. She has enough of a brother with such shifts. The days passed quietly, for Naruko, that's for sure. Kurama was still pinching his toys in the corners. Sasuke was building himself a world king. Mei was talking to her boyfriend on the phone. Tim was 2 years older than her and was studying to be a medic in college. They met by chance on the street. Mei twisted her leg, and he was next to her. Word for word, and here's a couple in love. They've been dating for 6 months. The newcomer returned to school a couple of days later and tried to stay away from Kurama, spending more time in crowded places. Kurama just grinned and licked his lips in anticipation. Lessons had already started a long time ago and everyone was sitting in their classrooms. Except for 2, which seriously worried Naruko. The kid that Kurama liked was intercepted on the way to class and taken to a room for sports equipment. Having pushed the guy there, Kurama's 6s immediately left, leaving them together. Well, hello, sweetie. Kurama grinned, noticing the fear in the guy's eyes. The young man rushed to the exit, but he was intercepted and thrown on the mats that were lying there. And where are you going? Please don't. The young man said, trembling. But Kurama only grinned and came closer, leaning on the guy. The young man resisted, shouted, but to no avail. Kurama was stronger. He quickly twisted the guy and pulled down his pants. The young man sobbed, trying to push him away, and when he felt his fingers in his hole, he screamed, "How you squeeze." The red-haired man purred, adding more fingers. "Let's stand for me again, honey." "I can't hear." Kurama sang, but without hearing the moan, he got angry. "I told you to moan." But the guy was silent, biting his hand. Growling, Kurama pulled down his pants and with one jerk entered the guy, forcing him to scream. He raped him for a long time, listening to his moans with pleasure. The guy only wanted it to end as soon as possible, losing consciousness on the last tremors. Kurama looked at the young man, grinned contentedly and straightened his clothes, left. Naruko was sitting on pins and needles in class. She felt that Kurama had done something. And after waiting for the call, she jumped out of the office. Walking down the corridor, she noticed a satisfied brother. He just went to meet her and smiled. The blonde immediately rushed to the gym. She knew that there would be no lessons there and Kurama could drag the guy there. Entering the room, Naruko was stunned, but quickly pulled herself together, ran up to him. When she saw that the young man was unconscious, she immediately ran to the teacher and the nurse. She just couldn't leave the guy in this state. The young man was taken to the medical office and provided first aid. They did not ask who did this, and they knew and understood that it was better not to get involved in this matter. And the guy should be advised not to go against Namikaze, otherwise he himself will not. At best, it will be translated, Kurama. Naruko shouted angrily and went up to her brother, slapped him in the face. "How dare you do such a thing? I just got what I wanted." The guy shrugged his shoulders, throwing a glance at the grinning Sasuke. "If I hadn't resisted, I would have enjoyed it." For which he immediately received a fist in the stomach. Bent double, Kurama grimaced. After all, my sister hurts when she's angry. He allowed such actions only to Sasuke and Naruko, while others who dared to hit him were sent almost to the wrong light. You're a monster, Kurama. The girl growled, noticing her brother's smile. Well, you're our beauty. The red-haired man chuckled. You're so cute when you're angry. Kurama said with emotion, receiving a positive nod from Sasuke. Bastard. Naruko said and turned around and went to the side of the medical office to check on the guy. She's really sweet and beautiful. Sasuke commented, following her with his eyes. And when? Kurama asked, throwing his hands behind his head, feeling only a slight pain from the blow. I don't mind meeting her now. But you know her. Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. And I don't want to force her, don't worry. The red-haired man slapped him on the shoulder. She doesn't have any choice. Some weaklings. Okay, let's get out of here. I'm too lazy to learn something, agreed Uchiha and headed for the exit after his friend. There were 2 weeks left until the end of the summer holidays and school started again. Naruko and Mei with her boyfriend went to the sea in secret from Kurama. We rested very well, so her brother's scolding did not spoil her mood. She had 2 more trimesters to finish her studies and she could go to university. She has already decided on a profession, journalism. In her opinion, it suits her perfectly. I haven't been able to find out where her brother will study yet, but I really hope that it would be further away. And then she didn't want to save guys and girls at the university from his raking paws. Naruko was sitting in the park on a bench under a branching tree, which could hide from the scorching sun. Mei was on a date with Tim. Kurama and Sasuke went to have fun somewhere out of town, decided to take revenge on her for a trip to the sea in this way. The girl closed her eyes and smiled. Naruko-chan. A man's voice was heard nearby. Opening her eyes, the girl saw a vaguely familiar guy with brown hair and green eyes. He stood and smiled, and there was a slight blush on his cheeks. Naru said, not understanding, I'm Sally. We went to high school together. The young man said excitedly, Sally-kun. The girl said dumbfounded, and then rushed to hug him. After that incident, she was very worried and wanted to see me to ask for forgiveness. I'm so glad to see you. Oh, she said, realizing what she was doing. Nothing. I'm glad too. The guy smiled and sat down with her on the bench. I'm sorry. Naruko whispered, lowering her head. Because of my brother, you went to the hospital, and then moved. It's okay. I didn't get hit that hard. Sully shrugged. Well, about moving. My parents divorced and I went to live with my father, that's how. Have you decided to come back? Naru asked. No. I just ran away from my father's supervision. The guy sighed. After the divorce, my father tried to live normally, but could not and began to drink a lot. I lost my job because of this. I moved here to my mother, and she's not particularly happy to see me. She has her own life after all. But she did not expel, she left with her lover somewhere. Got a part-time job as a mechanic. Do you know about cars? Yes. Father taught me. Smiled Sally. Well, how are you doing, business? Naruko sighed heavily and unconsciously put her head on his shoulder. Not really. My brother and Sasuke keep the whole school under control. I've already lost count of how many girls and guys I saved from their hands, and how many are not. Kurama has become more aggressive, especially when some guy tries to take care of me. Naruko complained. She didn't know why, but next to Sally she wanted to talk. I'm sorry to complain, nothing. It's not your fault that you have such a brother. Sully replied, looking up at the sky. Say, and if I asked you to date? The young man began, making Naruko shudder and look at him. Would you agree? are you serious? Absolutely. I've liked you since high school. And over these few years, my feelings have not diminished at all. The guy answered honestly. He really liked Naruko, or rather he loved her. Perhaps it was because of her that he decided to return, to see her again. Sally. Naruko said excitedly. You're a good guy and I like you, but, my brother. I'm afraid he'll do something if he finds out about you. I'm not afraid of your brother, it's worth it. Kurama, he's dangerous. He can kill. Naruko said seriously. Sally saw that she was not joking and should, in theory, retreat. But, he loved her, really loved her. I don't care, Sally, Naruko. I understand you're afraid for me. But let me take care of myself and you too. Give me a chance. The guy begged, suppose I give you a chance. What's next? We'll have to hide so Kurama doesn't find out, so we will. He hugged her and buried his face in her blonde hair. And after you finish school, we'll leave the city. I'll save up some money, I have money myself. Have you forgotten? The girl grinned, I haven't forgotten. But who knows what might happen, you're thinking like an adult man. Naruko smiled broadly, I am a man. Who wants to take care of his beloved, let me think. Naruko asked. She needed to think it over properly. Of course. I'll be waiting for your answer. Naruko was sitting in her room and looking out the window. She wanted to give Sally a chance, because she also liked him in high school, when they started talking more, walking. He made it clear that he was not afraid of her brother and was not going to back down. But she was afraid for him. But she also wanted to be at least a little bit happy and loved. Yes, she knew about Sasuke's feelings, but she didn't believe them. After all, if he really loved, he wouldn't sleep with everyone, while saying that he loves you, Naruko. Kushina called her. She had noticed her daughter's unusual condition for a long time. Mom. Something happened, that's what I wanted to ask you. You've barely eaten today and you're walking around pensive. Kushina said, sitting down next to her on the bed. Tell me, you know. Naruko began and bit her lip. There is one guy, we studied with him in high school. He confessed to me and offered to date. I told him I shouldn't because of Kurama. But he did not refuse the decision. The woman smiled, yes. He said he didn't care. He even agrees to meet secretly while I'm at school. Naruko smiled back. But I'm afraid, Naruko. Kushina took her daughter's hand. It's up to you. But I want you to be happy. And whatever choice you make, I will support and help, thanks. The girl hugged her mother, whispering words of gratitude to her. After Kushina left the room, Naruko texted Sally, asking for a meeting in the park. At the appointed time, they arrived on time, both worried. Sally. I agree to date you, but, before she could finish, she was pressed to her chest. I'm glad you didn't let me finish. The girl was indignant, the rest is not important. Sully shook his head, it's important. The girl moved away. It's important to me. Noticing that the young man was listening, she continued. We have to be careful, try not to catch the eye of my brother and his sixes, don't worry. Let's be careful. Meet where your brother doesn't go, okay? Mom supported me. Yes, and if you talk to Mei, she can cover up if anything. Naruko giggled. Mei. Are you still friends with her? The guy was surprised, and why not? Well, your brother, aggressiveness extends to guys. And he doesn't touch me or offend me, because she's my friend. And when I was kidnapped, I immediately ran to Kurama. Wait. Kidnapped? Sally asked, dumbfounded. I'll tell you later. The girl smiled, taking the guy by the hand. And now let's go on a date, I don't mind. The brown-haired man smiled and kissed his girlfriend on the cheek. They decided to take a walk in the park, and then sit in a cafe. Naruko understood that Kurama and Sasuke would arrive only in a week. But you should not relax. There were still 6 Kurama, who are just waiting to show themselves in front of the owner. Mei was sitting in a cafe with Naruko and looked at her happy friend. She hadn't seen her like this for a long time, and it was all thanks to Sally. Naruko and Sally have been dating for several months, and with each of their meetings, Naruko blossomed. Mei never helped her friend out and covered for her in front of her brother so that she could meet Sally. They had to see each other with caution, walked in the park almost hiding from Kurama's sixes, sat in a quiet cafe in a remote place from home and school, went to the movies or just sat at his house. They were cozy next to each other and they enjoyed every minute of being together. Not only did Mei notice the changes in Naruko, but Kushina also saw how her daughter blossomed and was sincerely happy for her. Well, how was the date yesterday? Mei asked, eating her cheesecake. Naruko smiled, crossing her fingers under her chin. Excellent. We sat at his house, watched a movie, ate popcorn and kissed. Naruko retold. And no cinema is needed, I agree. Tim and I also stay at home more often. He believes that it is not necessary to go on dates somewhere. If 2 people love each other, then sitting just at home can be considered romance. Mei said with importance in her voice, to which Naruko giggled. Well, Tim knows better. What is more visible? Suddenly a question sounded nearby. Turning their heads, the girls saw Kurama and Sasuke, and next to them 2 girls who were snuggling up to the guys. It's about dating. Naruko began, noticing her brother's frown. Sasuke also looked somehow not good. Tim rarely invites Mei anywhere, prefers the usual walks in the park or gatherings at home, and I'm not against it at all. Mei continued, smiling. After all, the main thing is attention and just being close to your loved one. Is not it so? I think you're right. Sasuke said, pulling away from the redhead and sitting down next to Naruko. The girl who was snuggling up to Sasuke looked unkindly at the blonde, but said nothing. The main thing is to be close. By the way, about the date. I have movie tickets, I want you to come with me. Wait, Sasuke. The redhead immediately said. You invited me to the cinema, really? Sasuke said coldly, throwing a furious look at the girl. Naruko looked at the redhead, and then at her grinning brother. I'm sorry, but I'm not going. Mei promised to go shopping with her today. Yes. Mei immediately confirmed. Go another time. Kurama said. Come on, sis, we don't go out together every day, well? Sasuke smiled, hugging Naruko. The blonde immediately pulled away from him, which caused the guy's displeasure. Okay. I think we'll postpone the shopping trip, do you mind? Naruko asked, looking at her friend. No, I don't mind. We can do it tomorrow, after school. That's great. Kurama nodded, hugging 2 girls at once. We'll find an extra ticket for you, baby. The guy purred to the redhead, which the girl immediately smiled at. Naruko was sitting in the cinema next to Sasuke and felt his hand on her shoulder. She managed to write to Sally that she would not be able to come to him, that she had to go to the cinema with her brother and Sasuke. Sally immediately unsubscribed, offering to meet tomorrow. He understood how worried his girlfriend was because of all their meetings and tried to calm her down, asking her to be patient until the end of her studies. Naruko herself realized that there was nothing to worry about. They are like first-class spies, hiding their relationship. But Naruko couldn't suppress her fear for her beloved. Who did you correspond with? Suddenly a question sounded in my ear. Naruko shuddered and looked at Sasuke. He looked at her for almost the whole movie, and even in the dim light he could see her wheat-colored hair, scars on her cheeks. He noticed how Naruko had changed over the past few months, how she had blossomed and began to smile more often. Even a fool would understand what was going on. But no matter how hard he tried to figure out who, it didn't work out. Even Kurama began to spend more time with his sister, trying to bring her to Sasuke. But she only moved away, wanting to be only with her beloved. With a classmate. Naruko replied. She asked for a physics notebook, really. Sasuke didn't believe her and squeezed her shoulder, pressed her closer to him. Did you correspond for so long because of one notebook? Yes. The girl nodded. And in general, you don't care who I correspond with. It shouldn't concern you. Naruko hissed, throwing off his hand and fixing her gaze on the screen. Sasuke didn't like these words very much, but he understood that he was dragging his feet with the relationship too much. After the end of the movie, the guys headed for the exit. Naruko just wanted to go home and call Sally. She was sure that Kurama and Sasuke would go to have fun with the girls. But she was wrong. Until very late in the evening, Sasuke did not let the blonde go far away from him. They decided to take a walk in the park, and then sit in a cafe. The girls who accompanied them were only too happy to hang around Kurama. And Sasuke tried to hold his beloved closer to him and inhale her pleasant smell. But Naruko herself was not happy about it. She didn't want to watch some sluts wagging their ass in front of her brother and ready to lie down under him on the table in a cafe. And Sasuke pressed her by the waist, not allowing her to move away, even despite her growling. And at night, Lemon, one of these sluts, the brunette, imagined his blonde, dreaming of getting her as soon as possible. Naruko and Sally began to see each other less often, and all because of Sasuke. He was rationing to finally get Naruko, sending her gifts and flowers, inviting her on dates. At first, she managed to avoid it and throw away gifts, but when Minato found out about Sasuke's intentions to meet his daughter, he pushed her and gave her gifts. And Naruko just couldn't refuse, just because of her father. Naruko communicated with Sally only by phone, telling him absolutely everything. And that night she couldn't resist calling Sally. "I'm sorry, you're probably already asleep," the girl said softly, looking at the sky. Snowflakes slowly descended to the ground, and frost painted patterns on the windows. Christmas is coming soon and Naruko wanted to spend it with her beloved, but she was not sure that it would come out. Nothing. To be honest, I was waiting for your call, the guy answered honestly. Sally was glad just to hear her voice. Sally. Naruko began uncertainly, "What's the matter? You're sure that you want to continue your relationship with me? What are you talking about?" The young man did not understand. Excitement showed in his voice. "My father thinks that I started dating Sasuke." Not even wanting to hear that it's not. The girl sobbed. "We've been seeing less and less of each other and I'm afraid that if Ku or Sasuke finds out about you then, don't think about it." Sully interrupted her. "I love you and I'm not going to leave you. Yes, we rarely see each other, but it doesn't change anything. After graduation, we will leave, so far away that even your father will not find us, promise?" Naruko smiled. "I promise. Now go to bed. And don't think about it," the young man whispered with tenderness. Good night. Love you, and I love you," Sully answered and hung up. Naruko looked at the sky once more and went to bed. Sally's right, they'll be together soon and even their father won't find them. Christmas is Naruko's most favorite holiday, not counting his birthday. Lots of lights, gifts, a snow-covered city, and most importantly a family dinner. It is on the birthday and Christmas that the family gathers together. Minato cancelled all his business that day and spent time with his wife and children. But it was this Christmas that Naruko wanted to spend with her beloved, but she could not explain to her father the reason for leaving. "I was afraid." So she was just waiting for it to be possible to leave unnoticed. This Christmas they will celebrate with the Uchiha family. This idea was suggested by Kurama, to which Minato gladly agreed. "Aren't you ready yet?" Kushina asked, coming into her daughter's room. Naruko looked at her mother, and then looked out the window again. Kushina sighed, sat down next to her and hugged her. I understand how you feel and I know what you want. But, Naruko, it's okay, Mom. The blonde interrupted her. There's no need to comfort me. Sally understands everything too and doesn't blame me, there's nothing to blame you for. Kushina smiled. It's not your last Christmas. Also, you won't be sitting with us all night, what? Naruko didn't understand. I'm sure Sasuke and Kurama will go somewhere. Minato and Fugaku will go to the office or something, so I can leave quietly. The girl clarified, seeing her mother's nod, I'll let you know when I can. The woman whispered and headed for the door. The guests will be here soon, you should get dressed. Thanks, Mom. Naruko thanked her, breaking into a happy smile. The whole Namikaze and Uchiha family was sitting at the festive table. Naruko met Itachi's husband, Day, that evening. He was a good guy, he was fond of art, they became friends pretty quickly. What caused the jealousy of two brothers? Sasuke was next to Naruko, all the time putting his arm around her waist or holding her hand. Looking at them, Minato and Fugaku were happy and approved of their union, not knowing the whole truth at all. And Naruko was only counting down the minutes when she would be able to leave this house. Is everything okay? Sasuke asked, lightly hugging the girl. Naruko immediately pulled away, making it clear about the distance. How long are you going to run away from me? What are you talking about? You know what I mean. You know about my feelings, but I don't understand why you won't accept them. Sasuke asked with slight irritation. He wanted to own her, to have her completely, without a trace. He was ready to give her the whole world, to fulfill any whim. Another would have screamed with joy for the whole neighborhood, but not Naruko. Sasuke. I treat you only as a friend and that's it. I'm sure you can find a much better girl than me. The girl tried to say as gently as possible, but Sasuke did not want to listen. He grabbed her arm and pulled her towards him, facing her face to face. You are the best, there are no others. And you will accept my feelings. You'll see. He said it right on the girl's lips and kissed her. Naruko jerked, but Sasuke didn't let her pull away, deepening the kiss. Whoa, I'm sorry. Kurama said sarcastically, approaching them. I didn't want to distract. Nothing. We were just talking. Sasuke grinned, hugging the blushing blonde closer to him. Naruko decided to remain silent, knowing full well that they would not listen to her. Well, yes, I see. Kurama smiled wider. I just wanted to know, are you going to the club with me? To the club? Thoughtfully shifting his gaze to Naruko, Sasuke nodded positively. It's worth giving her time to think about everything and make the right decision. Yes, and he will let off some steam. Great. I'm waiting at the exit. The guy winked and left. Sasuke and Naruko watched him go, and then the brunette kissed his beloved again and pulled away. See you tomorrow. Sasuke said and went after Kurama. Naruko stood for a while and ran to her mother's room. Mom. Kushina was sitting in the room by the mirror, putting jewelry in a jewelry box. Minato and Fugaku are in the billiard room. The woman said, looking at her daughter, and Kurama and Sasuke have just left. Naruko supported the conversation, breaking into a smile. So I can, of course. But wait a bit. Advised the woman, knowing full well that she would not wait for her daughter. Naruko ran along the road, not paying attention to the people who passed by and the wind that beat in her face. She just wanted to see Sally, snuggle up to him. The young man was sitting at home in front of the TV, with a bottle of beer. He wanted to spend this evening with Naruko, but he understood that this would not happen. He was distracted by a knock on the door, which greatly surprised him. Having opened the door, they immediately attacked him, knocking him to the floor. Sally. A joyful voice sounded. Naruko? The young man was surprised, while squeezing his beloved in his arms. Why are you here? stupid question. The girl answered, sitting up. Her eyes were shining with joy, and there was a blush on her cheeks that was mesmerizing. I came to spend Christmas with you. Although later, Naruko. Love you. Whispered the young man, kissing her on the lips. Naruko moaned into the kiss, burying herself in his hair. Sally got up from the floor and locked the door, picked up the girl in his arms and continued to kiss, headed to the bedroom. They both understood what was going to happen and were not at all against it. Naruko tore off her beloved's clothes, allowing her to undress herself. It seemed his lips and hands were everywhere, not missing a millimeter of her skin. He caressed, kissed and whispered various tender nonsense, making me moan. Sally tried to restrain himself so as not to hurt Naruko, and she saw it, asking not to stop, be patient a little. Sally whispered in her ear, carefully entering her. Naruko moaned painfully, scratching his back. After waiting a little, the young man began to move, increasing the pace and covering his neck with kisses. The moans spread throughout the room. It seemed that all the neighbors heard them, the whole world. But they didn't care that it was a clear day outside. Naruko was sleeping snuggled up to Sally, and the young man himself had not slept for a long time, just sorting through the blonde hair of his beloved. He was happy just from the thought that such an amazing girl loved him, and his heart made him tremble with joy. He loved her and wanted to make her happy. Naruko is from a rich family, but she has never shown that it does not matter to her whether he is rich or not. She loved him for who he was and asked for the same. Sensing that the girl was awake, Sally smiled and pulled her closer, kissing her plump lips. After lying down a little more, they decided to go for a little walk. Naruko was sure that Kurama, Sasuke and their sixes would not get out of the house until tomorrow. Therefore, I was not afraid that they would be noticed. They walked around the park holding hands and discussed plans for the upcoming weekend. There is a week of holidays ahead and they decided to spend them together. Naruko returned home in the evening, beaming with happiness, and immediately ran to Kushina to share her mood. The woman was happy for her daughter, but warned that Sasuke was looking for her today. Naruko nodded at this, but the mood did not deteriorate at all. The week flew by quickly, but for Naruko it was unforgettable. They walked along the embankment and in the park, went to cafes. And for the remaining 3 days, he took her to the hot springs, where they spent just the two of them. Returning home, Naruko ran into the room in high spirits and froze, looking at her brother. Kurama was sitting on the bed and looking at something in some photos. How did you rest, little sister? Kurama asked without looking at her. Great. The girl answered, already realizing that something was wrong. I'm glad. He looked up at his sister with a cold look and got up. Then tell me who it is. He threw the photos on the bed, forcing her to come over. Seeing the photo, Naruko shook with fear. They depicted her and Sally, where they hugged, kissed and just walked holding hands. Naruko looked at her brother and could not say a word. Panic and fear were reflected in her eyes. Fear for a loved one. Kurama looked at his sister and saw fear in her eyes. He had noticed his sister's strange behavior a long time ago. How she constantly corresponded with someone, went somewhere that even his henchmen could not find her. He would understand if she was dating Sasuke and behaved like that, but his friend was also angry at her behavior. Especially from the fact that she ignores him and does not want to be with him. May, her best friend, never covered for her, saying that the two of them were walking or sitting at her house. But Kurama is not blind and has seen May walking with her boyfriend a couple of times when she should be with Naruko. And now his suspicions were justified. His subordinates found evidence that she was dating someone. Apparently they decided that they would not follow them until the holidays, so they relaxed. I'm waiting for an answer. The young man reminded about himself. Naruko closed her eyes and took a deep breath, looked at her brother again. I don't have to answer you, that's how. Otherwise, I'll find out for myself. Kurama shrugged his shoulders and headed for the door. Well, you'll find out, and what? What will it change? Naruko asked loudly and confidently, forcing her brother to stop. Whatever you think, I will stay with him and will only date him. It's unlikely. The youth replied rudely. I'm not going to let this scum date you. It's up to me to decide who to meet, who to love, and, Naruko spoke loudly, not noticing that Minato entered the room after hearing swearing, who to sleep with, sleep. Kurama repeated, and then jumped up to his sister and grabbed her by the hand. Did you sleep with that scum? He's not trash or trash. I love him and I don't care that he's not rich. We've been together for almost 6 months now. Wait a minute. Minato interrupted her. It was at this moment that they noticed that their father was also in the room. You're dating Sasuke, right? That's what you think. The girl snarled, pulling her hand away and stepping aside. I have never loved Sasuke, I treat him as a friend. He's the one who wants a relationship with me, but I love someone else and I only want to be with him. It's out of the question. Minato immediately said coldly. You're not going to date that guy, you have to break up with him and immediately. I won't think about it. Naruko replied. Her heart was squeezed with fear, she did not want to ruin her happiness because of the whim of her father and brother. Father, please. I love him. Yes, he is not from the wealthy like me, but Sally is very good, kind, hardworking. He's thinking about the future, about what will make me happy. The girl tried to convince her father. But Minato wouldn't listen to her. Sasuke. He's the perfect match for her and he won't accept anything else, Sally. Kurama said, grinning. I remembered him. He suggested dating you back in high school, but then he left. I found out that his parents divorced and he left with his drunken father, and his mother, who sleeps with everyone, stayed here. The father is an alcoholic, and the mother is a whore. Minato enumerated, looking sternly at his daughter. She understood everything. Looking at him, he wouldn't let her. I don't think I need to explain to you what I decided. No need. The girl replied in a trembling voice. She was in pain, very much in pain. We need to warn Sally. We need to tell him to leave. Noticing Kurama's gaze, Naruko thought. Minato nodded and left the room. Kurama stood in front of his sister and saw tears streaming down her cheeks. Approaching her, he embraced her tenderly, to which she did not resist. Just out of love for you, sis, I'm going to let you warn your ex-boyfriend. Let him not come close to you, otherwise I will kill you. Pulling away, Kurama broke into a grin. More precisely, Sasuke will kill him, especially when he finds out that he slept with you. Naruko sobbed and lowered her head. In this she was grateful to him. As soon as Kurama left, the girl immediately dialed the number of her beloved and told everything, crying, begging him to leave town and forget her. But Sally said only that he would think of something, that he was not going to give up. And he promised to stay away from her until he decided something. That evening, Kushina sat in her daughter's room, comforting her and cursing her husband. At school, when May found out about what had happened, she asked for a petition that she could not help her properly. But Naruko did not blame her, but only thanked her for her help. But Sasuke, having learned everything from Kurama, was furious. For so many months she managed to hide everything and would have continued to do it if she hadn't relaxed at Christmas. Why him and not me? Sasuke asked, growling, pressing the girl against the wall under the stairs. Because he is. Naruko said, looking seriously at the brunette. Because I love him, not you. I've never confessed to you. Even before you started dating him. You didn't even think about my feelings. And he confessed and you immediately. The guy growled, squeezing her shoulders. Yes, right away. Because I saw that he was sincere. But you don't look it. You said you loved me, and you slept with everyone who approached you. The girl said rudely, trying to push him away. How do I know if I would agree to be with you, and you would cheat on me? I wouldn't cheat. Sasuke interrupted her, burying his face in her neck. I wouldn't cheat on you for anything. I wouldn't even let these whores get close to me. And I slept with others because you wouldn't even let me touch you. I was jealous and angry, taking it out on them, and you think I'll believe it? Naruko snorted and felt like she was bitten on the neck. She screamed and tried to pull away, but Sasuke wouldn't let her. It doesn't matter anymore. The guy said with rage and jealousy, looking into the eyes of his beloved. You're mine. And you're dating me. And I'll deal with that guy personally when I see him. You won't see it. Naruko said in a trembling voice. The neck ached after the bite. I warned him. Well. So much the better for him. Sasuke grinned and kissed the girl, not allowing her to pull away. He kissed her roughly, fiercely, making her almost suffocate. It's time to get back to class. The news that Sasuke and Naruko started dating did not surprise anyone. Sasuke, as he said, did not pay attention to other girls, being next only to Naruko. The girls were not happy with this and several times tried to take Sasuke away from her, almost brazenly climbed up to him. Sasuke immediately gave such girls to his guys for entertainment, making it clear that he was not joking. Naruko noticed it too and even respected him a little, but she didn't fall in love. She loved Sally and really missed him and wanted to see him. But I understood that it was dangerous. Sasuke is only glad of his girlfriend's submissiveness, although occasionally she continued to snap and be rude. But hugging her, kissing her, inhaling her scent and just being with her made the brunette happy. I love you. Sasuke whispered, kissing her neck and getting his hands under her jacket, stroking her waist. He dragged her into the back room and pressed her against the wall, biting into her lips. I love you, repeated the brunette, touching her breasts and squeezing the nipple. Naruko shuddered at every touch and bit her lip, trying not to moan. But even she could admit that she enjoyed being touched. Naruko understood that it was not Sally, but the body itself responded to the caresses. Sasuke continued to kiss her, pulling off her t-shirt. He wanted her and couldn't stand it anymore. It hurts. The girl moaned when Sasuke entered her. She crossed her legs around his waist and buried her face in his shoulder, trying to breathe deeper. After these words, he froze and began to cover her neck with kisses, trying to calm her down. After waiting a little, the brunette began to move slowly, covering her shoulders and neck with kisses and bites. Gradually, the pace increased and Naruko just couldn't hold back the moans, arching and squeezing the guy's shirt. Sasuke growled, picking up the pace faster and enjoying the closeness of his beloved. He felt Naruko dig her nails into his shoulders, heard her wonderful moans, saw how good she was. When they reached the peak, they came at the same time. You're into me, Naruko panted, burying her forehead in the shoulder of the brunette. Sasuke buried his face in her hair, gently stroking her back. I will be only glad if we have a baby. The brunette rumbled, enjoying her smell. Naruko closed her eyes, waiting for Sasuke to let her go. She, too, would be glad to have a baby, but she represented another person in the role of a father. Naruko walked around the garden and enjoyed the early spring. In a couple of weeks, their studies will end and they will receive certificates, and after that they will enter the university. The girl did not lose hope that she would act separately from Kurama and Sasuke. Kushina walked beside her and looked at her with excitement. Naruko's story somehow reminds her of her own life, except that her daughter's beloved is alive. Have you already decided where you will enroll? Kushina asked, stopping. Naruko looked at her mother and smiled, shivering slightly from the cool wind. I decided. I found a good university, but it's quite far from home. The girl shrugged her shoulders. Therefore, we will have to look for housing closer to school. I think father won't mind. and find me a place to live." The girl knew that it was better to solve such issues with her father, especially after everything that had happened. "Why do you need a place to live?" A man's voice sounded. Turning around, they noticed Sasuke and Kurama. Sasuke frowned at his girlfriend. He didn't like this conversation. "For study." Kushina immediately replied, glancing at her daughter, and then continued. "The university Naruko wants to go to is far away. So she wants to find a closer place to live. Right?" "Yes." Naruko nodded, feeling like she was being hugged. Sasuke ran his nose through her hair and breathed in a pleasant smell. Kurama, watching this, grinned, but was sincerely happy for them. "It's not necessary." Sasuke purred. "We're going to live together anyway, so don't worry about housing." "You mean together?" Naruko started up. She wasn't ready to cringe with him yet. But apparently, he was of a different opinion, indirect. "I have already started looking for an apartment for us, just near the university." "Wait. But you don't know exactly where I'm going." "Actually, he does." Kurama answered for his friend. "I saw a letter from Konoha University that you were accepted for training." Besides, the young man grinned, which the girl did not like very much, as did Kushina. "Sasuke and I also plan to go there." "What? Hope is dead." Naruko looked at her brother, and then at Sasuke. "You too, of course." "Well, to be honest, we were waiting for you to decide on admission." Sasuke confessed. "From the very beginning we wanted to study together to make it easier and calmer." "Who is calmer for?" Naruko frowned and moved away from Sasuke, noticing his displeased look. "For me or for you? I was hoping at least to stay away from you at the university." The girl exploded. And not only was she deprived of happiness with her beloved, but also at the university her eyes will be sore. "I wanted to study quietly, make new friends. And it is not possible to do this with you. You're always either fighting, threatening, or raping." Naruko said, looking menacingly at her brother. Kushina looked at her son dumbfounded, not knowing such details. "Don't get angry, little sister. I promise we'll be good. And don't forget that Sasuke is now your boyfriend. If he threatens anyone, it's those who will stick to you." Kurama chuckled. Sasuke gritted his teeth at this. No, he would rather kill them, but it's better not to know his beloved. "I think we should go back inside," Kushina suggested. "It's getting cold already, and dinner is probably set." "It's true." Sasuke agreed, taking Naruko's hand. "Your hands are already cold. I don't want you to get sick, come on," Kurama said cheerfully and headed for the house. Everyone followed him. Sasuke held the girl's hand, not wanting to let her go for a minute. The whole Uchiha family was invited to dinner today, and for a reason. It was a little noisy at the table. Sasuke was discussing something with Kurama, sometimes with Itachi. Kushina is with Mikoto, and Minato is with Fugaku. Only Naruko and Dei were silent. They only occasionally glanced at each other, as if they understood all the pain of their lives. Naruko noticed how Itachi was jealous of Dei. He, like Sasuke, practically did not let go of the young man. It looks like their whole family is jealous and possessive. Naruko thought, sipping some juice, and abruptly jumped up from the table and ran towards the bathroom. Everyone looked at her dumbfounded, and Sasuke and Kurama rushed after her. Kushina also got up and looked at her husband, followed her daughter, Naruko. "Is Naruko all right?" Kurama asked, running after his sister into the bathroom. The girl was kneeling in front of the toilet. She was vomiting. "Naruko, it's okay," the girl said in a trembling voice. She sat up and grabbed her brother's arm to keep from falling. Sasuke came closer and hugged him, led him to the exit of the room where the worried mother was waiting. "Honey, is everything okay? You're all pale." It's worth calling Tsunade. Kurama nodded in agreement and was about to go call her, but Naruko stopped him. It's okay. I just ate something wrong, that's all. It will pass. The girl waved away, but immediately broke away from Sasuke's embrace and flew to the toilet. Kurama called Tsunade. Sasuke asked, stroking his beloved on the back. Ku did not argue and ran to call, warning the others for one thing. Tsunade arrived quickly and locked herself in the room with the girl, began to inspect and ask questions. Why is it taking so long? Sasuke asked irritably. They were all sitting in the living room and waiting, hoping it wasn't anything serious. This is not a quick process, young man. Tsunade replied, walking into the room. Noticing the excited looks, the woman smiled. She's fine. I gave her medicine, now she is resting. I also took tests from her, just in case, to check. But approximately, said the woman, throwing a malicious look at Sasuke. She's pregnant, what? Kurama, Sasuke, and Minato said dumbfounded at the same time. The term is small, about 2 weeks or 3. But I will definitely tell you everything tomorrow. Smiled at Tsunade and left. I'm having a baby. Sasuke whispered dumbfounded. I'm the father, not a fig to yourself. I'm an uncle. Kurama said cheerfully, and I'm a grandfather. Minato said, looking in the direction where Tsunade had gone, you're not the only one, by the way. Fugaku said proudly and looked at his son with approval. Although I thought that grandchildren would appear in a couple of years, Sasuke. Kurama called him softly. The brunette walked away with a friend to the side and looked at him. You slept with her, didn't you? Not that motherfucker, nodded Sasuke. A month later, after Christmas, I slept with her for the first time in the back room. Well, and then, I got to a tasty piece. Sasuke replied sarcastically. Yes, and you saw it yourself. I was next to her, then you were. They didn't take their eyes off her, I'm glad. Kurama grinned, happy for his friend. Naruko. He called his sister loudly, noticing her in the doorway. You should rest. Kushina started up, approaching her daughter. I don't want to. The girl shook her head, sitting down on the sofa next to Day. Did Tsunade-san tell you what's wrong with me? She didn't say a word to me. The girl asked excitedly. Sasuke sat down next to her, putting his arm around her waist. Naruko still felt a slight weakness, so she did not consciously put her head on his shoulder. Sasuke, smiling, buried his nose in her hair. She did. She took the tests to check. But presumably you're pregnant. Minato replied, noticing his daughter's dumbfounded look. Wait, what? Pregnant? The girl asked, startled. She looked at the pleased Sasuke, and then at Kurama, who nodded approvingly at her. I can't be pregnant. It's still early. The girl jumped to her feet. I didn't graduate from university. I planned after, quietly. Quietly. Kurama tried to calm her down, coming closer. Calm down, you have nothing to worry about. Minato also tried to calm her down. You will enter the university a little later, but I already have. Naruko interrupted. To Konoha, that's how. Throwing a glance at Sasuke, the man sighed and looked back at his daughter. So you will study by correspondence. There won't be a problem with that, it's true. You have nothing to worry about. Fugaku agreed. And since we were pleased with this news, I think it's not worth dragging it out with another one. I agree. With what news? Naruko was wary, looking at her pleased father. We're talking about your engagement to Sasuke, huh? The girl froze. It seemed there was a ringing in her ears. We planned the wedding when you will be in the 2nd year. But due to the circumstances, it is better to have a wedding this summer. While the term is small. Minato suggested, looking at Fugaku. Mikoto and Kushina looked at the girl with excitement, noticing her inhibition. I agree. It's not worth dragging it out, Naruko. Kushina called her, but the girl did not answer. Pregnant. Wedding. Pregnant. Wedding. The girl repeated in her head. I'm pregnant with Sasuke's baby. And I'm marrying him. Totally fucked up. Naruko looked at Sasuke and staggered to the floor, losing consciousness. Kurama, being nearby, immediately picked it up. Everyone decided that it came from the shocked news and overwork. Kurama carried his sister to her room, and Sasuke followed him. That night Sasuke stayed the night in his beloved's room, hugging her to him and gently stroking her flat tummy. As Tsunade suspected, Naruko turned out to be pregnant. The term is 2.5 weeks. The girl immediately realized that Sasuke's father, because she slept with Sally for the last time more than 2 months ago. She didn't know what to do next. Naruko was sure that after learning about her pregnancy, Sally would immediately forget her. Otherwise, it's even better, maybe he's already forgotten. I haven't heard from him for 2 months. Sasuke and Kurama took care of the girl from all sides. Naruko, of course, was pleased that they were worried about her, taking care of her, and so on, but feelings for Sasuke did not appear. Most likely because she still loved Sally. Sasuke saw it too and was angry, snapping at other people. Kurama comforted him, saying that the time would come and she would forget about him, but knowing his sister, the young man himself doubted. But still hoped for a good outcome in their family life. The day of certification. All students congratulated each other on graduation and shared news about their future place of study. Kurama and Sasuke were surrounded from all sides, questioning them. Especially the girls, hoping to try their chance one last time, to win the guys. They didn't even mind that Sasuke already had a girlfriend. Naruko and Mei stood aside and watched this performance, waiting for the arrival of Mei's boyfriend. Naruko. A quiet voice sounded behind him. Startled, the girl turned around and noticed the guy behind the tree. He was standing in a black hoodie, hiding his face under the hood. Looking closer, Naruko immediately recognized her beloved. Cautiously looking around, she headed towards him. Mei noticed this and wanted to call out to her, but when she realized who she was going to, she fell silent. Sally. The girl said in a trembling voice. The guy grabbed her by the hand and took her around the corner of the building so they wouldn't be seen. Stopping, he immediately hugged her, hugging her closer. I thought I'd never see you again. I promised I'd think of something, Sally. Naruko whispered, almost crying as she looked at him. I can't be with you, what? He didn't understand. I'm pregnant. From Sasuke. And he will not let go, he will search, let him search. The guy answered seriously. He searches as much as he wants. And the child, we will raise him together. Are you serious? Naruko asked in surprise. Of course. He kissed her. We need to leave, right now. There is a car at the back gate, we will take it to the bus station. And then we'll take the bus. Good. The girl nodded and took the guy by the hand and followed him. They quickly got to the car and got into it, drove off. Suigetsu, Sasuke's friend, was watching all this. He noticed how Naruko walked away with some guy around the corner and hid behind a tree. After that, he immediately went to Sasuke, telling about it, as well as saying the number of the car that he managed to find it. Sasuke growled. Kurama was also not happy about this news. He decided not to tell his father, they would figure it out themselves. Suigetsu immediately got into his laptop and connected to the cameras from the roads, tracing the route of the car. Bus station, about an hour's drive from here. The guy immediately informed me as soon as he discovered where she was staying. Call Yugo, let him take a few and go there. He's closer. But warn them not to touch Naruko. Sasuke said furiously, heading for his car. Naruko and Sally were waiting for their bus. Their departure would only be in half an hour, but they were already glad to leave this city. Time seemed to drag on slowly, and when it came time to go to the bus, they blocked the road. Naruko immediately recognized Yugo and, squeezing her beloved's hand, looked at the other sixes with fear. Sasuke is waiting, Yugo said roughly. Sully did not say anything and hit one, abruptly took off, dragging Naruko with him. They ran as fast as they could to the car, pushing everyone along the way. Naruko, breathing heavily, tried to keep up with her beloved, but getting tangled in her legs, she collapsed to the ground. Sally, jumping up to her, helped her up, noticing that the girl twisted her leg. Sobbing in pain, Naruko looked up and saw Sasuke. He was walking towards them, and Kurama and a few other guys were nearby. Sally, the girl whispered. Stepping on her foot, the girl mumbled, holding back tears. And where are you going, with my fiancé? Sasuke asked. There was fury in his voice and coldness in his eyes. Kurama looked the same way. It's not yours, the guy said confidently, closing it. And I've never been yours. She decides who she wants to be with. You had a chance to escape, boy, Kurama said in a drawl. All their attention was focused on the opponent. Naruko looked at what was happening with excitement. But you look very stupid, since you decided not to use it. I'm not afraid of you, and in vain, Kurama chuckled. At his signal, they were surrounded, not allowing them to escape again. Ku, please, Naruko said. Let him go, I beg you, the girl asked, coming out from behind her beloved, but forgetting about the dislocated leg, she fell to the ground screaming, Naru. Sally wanted to jump up to her, but froze when she noticed Sasuke's gun. The girl was sitting on the ground holding her leg, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. And it was not clear why, because of the pain or the situation. Don't you dare touch her, Sasuke growled and, looking at Kurama, went to the girl. Sasuke, you are welcome, the girl asked, sitting and looking at the guy. Let him go. I'll do everything, everything. Just let go. Tears were streaming down her cheeks without stopping. Sasuke was furious. He didn't want to see his beloved crying because of some garbage. It didn't matter that Sully hadn't hurt her. Only his existence hindered Sasuke. Kurama, take Naruko to my house. Ku grinned at this and went up to his sister, picked her up in his arms. And this one? To the warehouse. Wait. No. Sasuke. Naruko screamed, trying to escape from her brother's arms. She knew what was going on there. She had heard more than once how people who did not please them were sent there, and then they were found barely alive, dead or not found at all. Kurama held her tightly, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free. As a result, she sobbed into her brother's chest. As Sasuke asked, Naruko was taken to his house. When asked what happened, Kurama said that Naruko was attacked by some scumbag and that Sasuke was dealing with him now. Mikoto immediately started helping Naruko, bandaged her leg and gave her a sedative. The girl fell asleep as soon as she was left alone. Sasuke returned closer to night. There were traces of blood on his clothes, which did not bother him at all. Kurama managed to tell him exactly what he said to his relatives, so he listened to the approving words from his father without surprise. Entering the room, he went to the bed and sat down next to his beloved. He was not happy with her action, but now no one can prevent them from being together. You didn't kill me because I'm pregnant? Naruko said softly, looking sleepily at the guy. Sasuke ran his fingers through her hair, and then abruptly squeezing them, bent down to her face, because I love you. Sasuke said coldly, looking at her with jealousy. Because I want you to be only with me. And I will kill anyone who prevents us from being together. Sasuke was almost shouting. And I will make you love me, this is unlikely to happen. The girl sobbed. Sasuke let go of her hair and stroked her cheek. No matter how much time passes, you will love me. And even if you don't, you still belong to me. Just me. Sasuke whispered into her lips and kissed them, deepening them. Before the wedding day, Naruko stayed to live with Sasuke. Her father was not against it. Kurama visited his sister quite often, bringing her favorite muffins with orange. Naruko behaved as usual, smiled, talked to everyone, walked with Mei, under guard, and with Sasuke, but with emptiness in her soul. The biggest piece of her heart and soul was torn out, and there was no substitute for it. Preparations for the wedding were in full swing. All the details were handled by parents, allowing their children to be together and not letting Naruko worry about trifles. However, she was not worried, but calmly treated everything. The wedding dress had to be altered several times, because of the bride's tummy. Naruko was already in her 4th month and her tummy was already a little big, and the wedding itself should take place in early July, when the deadline will be almost the 5th month. So I had to alter everything, but no one was outraged, understanding everything perfectly. Sasuke woke up in the middle of the night, not finding his fiancée around him. Worried, he went to look for her. Only 15 minutes later, he found her in the kitchen with a whole plate of sandwich with various fillings and tomato juice. Decided to eat for the night looking? Sasuke grinned, sitting down next to her. The child wanted to eat. The girl calmly replied, taking a bite. Sasuke smiled and hugged Naruko, kissing her on the cheek, so it will be a boy. The brunette whispered in his ear, to which Naruko froze and looked at him sullenly. Why all of a sudden? Well, of course. You eat a lot, which means that a strong and healthy boy will be born, and not necessarily. The girl shook her head, continuing to eat. Sasuke couldn't get enough of his bride. With this pregnancy, she only became more beautiful. It doesn't matter who will be, the main thing is healthy. Sasuke purred, to which Naruko nodded. She also wanted the baby to be born healthy. For some reason, she did not hate the child, perhaps because Sally was not against raising him. Anyway, she already loved the baby and wanted to raise him in love and preferably in proper upbringing. She didn't want her children to be like Sasuke and Kurama, or rather like her whole family. It's time to go to bed. Sasuke interrupted her thoughts. She didn't even notice how she ate all the sandwiches. Taking her by the hand, Sasuke led her into the bedroom. She decided to temporarily forget about studying for at least a year. Sasuke was not against it, even glad. Sasuke decided to suspend the search for an apartment, thinking that it would be better for them to live in a mansion. Perhaps they will move, but only when the baby is older. Although Sasuke plans to have at least 2 more kids, wanting his beloved to spend more time at home with the children and with him. Sakura stood aside and almost drooled on Sasuke. She helped with the organization of the wedding and was outraged that she didn't get such a handsome man. In other things, she did not despair and tried in every possible way to seduce Uchiha. Then he will come in a revealing outfit, then he will bend down so that everything is visible, he will accidentally fall on him. Sasuke is not a fool and understood what was going on, as did Naruko, who was watching this performance. Of course, at first she thought that she would be able to repel him, but remembering what Sasuke is capable of, she only felt sorry for her. Sakura saw that the brunette was not buying her charms and then she decided to act differently. She knew that brides usually cancel weddings and break up with their fiancé if they catch them. Especially when the bride is pregnant and her mood jumps constantly. So she decided to use this technique, confident of her victory. And there you just need to comfort the groom, sleep with him and that's it. Sakura entered Sasuke's bedroom just as he was changing clothes, ostensibly to discuss something. After making sure that he was alone, she began to act. With a graceful gait, she approached him and ran her fingers over his chest, biting her lip, thinking that it was sexy. Sasuke watched her actions without doing anything, although he already felt irritated by her touch. Sasuke-kun, I wanted to clarify some details about tomorrow's ceremony. Sakura said sweetly, what exactly? Sasuke asked coldly, taking a step back from her, barely restraining himself so as not to wring her neck. For example, about flowers, the girl purred, approaching the guy. They don't seem too colorful to you, mottled? Sasuke asked, raising an eyebrow, and at that moment they heard footsteps towards the room. Looking at the door, Sasuke missed the moment when Sakura came very close and kissed him. Naruko entered the room and froze, watching her fiancé kissing another girl. She didn't feel jealous or upset, even pain from this scene, but it was still unpleasant. Therefore, the girl just turned around and left in the direction of the kitchen. Clinging to the guy, Sakura tried to deepen the kiss, but he only pushed her away sharply and slapped her in the face. Falling, Sakura looked at him dumbfounded, not expecting such a turn at all. Did you think to disrupt my wedding by such an act? Sasuke asked ominously, looking coldly at the girl. My Naruko knows that I will never cheat on her and saw what you were trying to achieve. The young man enumerated, taking the phone and typing something. He was confident in his beloved. Sasuke talked to her about love every day, ignoring the other girls who made eyes at him. Me. I'm sorry. Sakura squeaked, getting up from the floor. I think I'll go. Why? Sasuke grinned, approaching her. You wanted to get thrills. Is that right? What? She looked at him uncomprehendingly, and then turned around, noticing two guys who entered the room. Did you call the boss? One of them asked, shifting his gaze to the agitated girl. Yes. You can have fun. He nodded at the frightened girl. But not here, understood. The second grinned and grabbed Sakura, threw her on his shoulder. Sakura tried to escape, screamed, but no one paid attention to it. Sasuke threw on his shirt. He was already in trousers, headed to the kitchen, knowing perfectly well that Naruko was there. The girl was sitting at the table and was already eating the third bucket of ice cream. Shaking his head, the brunette took away the bucket, causing the blonde's displeasure. Give it back. No. I don't want you to get sick before the wedding. I won't get sick. The girl was indignant, trying to win back the ice cream. Don't you have to entertain Sakura? Are you jealous? Sasuke purred, hugging his beloved. No, the blonde immediately replied, shoving a spoonful of ice cream into her mouth. Sasuke smiled wider at this. Yes, she was not jealous of him, but he saw that the situation was not pleasant to her. On the day of the ceremony, Naruko walked to the altar on the arm of her father. Minato was simply glowing with joy for his daughter. He was calm for her future. There were many guests, and the wedding itself was magnificent. At the altar, Sasuke held his beloved by the hands and pronounced an oath. But the girl herself could not utter a word, which caused the excitement of the groom and the others. Naruko looked at Sasuke, and a tear flowed down her cheek from the realization that the cage had slammed shut and she could not get out. Taking a deep breath, she pronounced the oath in a trembling voice. After that, they were declared husband and wife. Everyone decided that it happened out of excitement and because of pregnancy, she became too sentimental. Sasuke hugged his beloved and stroked her hair soothingly. I love you. He whispered in her ear. Now nothing will separate us. Naruko said nothing. She closed her eyes and put her head on his shoulder. Now she's in a cage. In a beautiful, golden cage, but with blood stains and who knows how many more spots will appear in the future. That's the end of it.